Hi, this is the first time I've done video. Jonathan, and this is John. So I don't know if I'm going to do video on my podcast, but I might put it on YouTube, whatever. If you want, it's cool.
Sure.
But real informal. We'll start with, who is John?
Who is John? You're asking me right now?
Yeah, who are you? Like, let's introduce yourself.
All right.
To, like, you haven't met someone, so
okay.
You have some sort of relatability to you.
Well, let's say this is the first time I'm on your show, so for relatability purposes and context, this is about PTSD, correct?
Correct.
Right? Yep. So who am I in relationship to PTSD?
Yeah.
All right.
In the sense of, I really enjoy when we talk about it because I feel like the depth that you go to is unique. Like, not a lot of people go that deep. Not a lot of people have, I guess, spent that much time dealing with it. But you have a unique story that led to that.
Right.
And that's what I'm curious to hear about.
Okay. All right. So background. College, high school, college, briefly, and then into the military. Just a regular, everyday ground pounder, combat engineer, nothing special. And 1992, join and go through my training and head on off to Somalia, 1993, 94, the whole Black Hawk Down incident, et cetera, et cetera. That takes place while I am there. There are many other things that happen in Mogadishu, Somalia during that time frame. It's not just, Black Hawk Down is the most infamous experience or portrayal of what took place there, but it was a United States operation for multiple years. It wasn't just a few weeks in and out with some Rangers and Special Forces, et cetera, et cetera. There were daily ops, and there were multiple operations. There was Operation Restore Hope and Operation Continue Hope, and there were UN peacekeeping operations, and there were U.S. combat operations. So there was a lot of things happening there. So do my time there, come back. I'm a changed man. Changed in which way? It's hard to say. Came back from those experiences definitely confused, angry, depressed. Also to add to that, because of where we're at right now, we are.
Yeah, we're going to get into that.
Yeah, we're in Ukraine.
We are.
Right. We're in Ukraine, and I'm distracted. So like you and I have spent the better part of the last year talking in depth about PTSD and spirituality and all of these other things that have arisen out of our conversations. But here we are a few weeks into our arrival on the ground, and there's a tempo here that just kind of, the reality of which just hit me 10 minutes ago.
Right.
As I was downstairs,
right,
as on a thread, realizing like shit's hitting the fan, not military speaking, but like what we're here to do, the mission set, and the tempo is about to pick up. So I'm a little distracted, usually we have like these amazing.
Usually we're sitting on a couch. I'm eating ice cream in Hawaii. Maybe just hit a vape pen.
Right.
So it's like, bro, let's talk about So
I'm usually just sitting there like throwing caramel corns at your face.
Right.
We've got all the time in the world, nothing bothering us, but we're not in Hawaii anymore.
No.
Right. And so I've got all these things kind of like pressing on the back of my brain, like shit, we good.
So let's get into a little bit of that. First off, I want to ask, what led to you wanting to join the military?
Okay, that's a great question, and it keeps me focused and on task right now because I am so distracted by this other stuff. Why did I join the military? I was young, I was energetic, I was looking not for purpose at that time, but I was looking for community. Now, these are things that I was unaware of.
Right.
So I'm speaking largely to the unconscious aspects of who I was at that time. And we'll get into consciousness versus unconsciousness, et cetera, et cetera. So at that time, I was a young, conditioned, deeply patterned individual who did not fit into the college scene. It was not what I had wanted. It was more of where I was pushed as a result of the family that I had come from. I go to college, I am a wild man. I discover vodka, I discover LSD.
Basically college was because that's something that you thought you had to, or something?
No,
it was just traditional?
No, it was something that was forced upon me.
Okay.
I was out of high school. I said, I do not want to go to college. I was told that I would go to college, and I said, I am not ready for that. It's not what I want. However, parental pressure
Back in those days, that's fearful. You know?
Right. It was like, no, you will go to college. And I said, okay, cool. I grew up in Pennsylvania and said, I will go to Utah.
Yeah.
I will go ski in Utah. And if this is what you want me to do, this is what I will do.
All right.
And so I did it. And I went to shred the gnar.
Powdery gnar.
Right. And I ended up having a fantastic time, but at the same time, there was this part of me that was itching to explore life on a deeper level, although I was not aware of that yet, as I look back in retrospect, hindsight.
I feel like we all had that, you know, we call it the awakening or whatever it is when like you realize, oh, I'm doing these decisions that you feel that are just like subconscious when really they're not subconscious. You're just not, you're numb to the reason behind why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I go back, it's 1992. I'm bored. I think at this point I had probably been kicked out of the dorms. And so I'm living.
Why'd you get kicked out of the dorms?
I was, like I said,
vodka. Okay, go ahead.
I was enjoying myself. I was wild. I was out of control. Right. I was very difficult to tame. It was a Mormon influenced culture and it was a Mormon influenced college. I was definitely a wild one, for that environment. Although, prior to that in high school, I wasn't much of a partier. I hit the college scene and I just fucking went full blast.
Were you sheltered as a kid?
No, I had a lot of freedom. I had so much freedom. At least in my high school years, I didn't have the need to imbibe. It wasn't something I was really interested in. Hit college and it was just a different scene.
Did you maybe like to fit in or was it just like...
No, in fact, it was
tasted the dragon, chased the dragon.
Well, I think I was introduced to I was going to say vodka. I was introduced to LSD. Yeah. And it was actually a consciousness expansive experience initially. And so I was really drawn to that and I would just drop LSD and like wander for hours, I mean, multiple hours. And then one night I was invited to a party. I went to a party and, this sophomore, I was a freshman, made me a screwdriver. I'd never had a screwdriver in my life and boom, I was hooked, and obviously, I came from a family where there was a long line of alcoholics and alcoholism and abuse and mental illness. So I was hooked.
Right.
So I did not know that. Again, I didn't know that I had come from a long line of alcoholics and mental illness. This is, again, something that I would discover in my later years because as a child and as a teen, because we were middle class and comfortable, I would not have described my father as an alcoholic or someone who even appeared to be an alcoholic. Right. I had a very regimented, disciplined protocol that I followed all through high school. I put myself to bed at a certain time. I was up early. I was doing things, so I was working a lot. I had jobs. I just had my own existence, my own life. I was into mountain biking. I was into skiing. I had a full-time life working and going to school and just living my life as it was. And then, of course, at the same time, after high school, I was like packing my bags and getting the fuck out of there because unbeknownst to me, I would later discover that what I grew up in was an extremely disturbing, mentally ill, unconsciously disturbing environment.
Yeah.
So go to college, join the military literally like without really putting any thought or research into it. It was an extremely impulsive decision. And there was a military installation that was adjacent to the University of Utah, Camp Douglas. And I was mountain biking through it to get to the trails in the foothills of Salt Lake, saw a soldier, looked over at him and just literally spontaneously said, "How do I become one of you?" He happened to be a recruiter.
He was like, "Sign here."
We took apart my mountain bike, threw it in his car. I drove downtown and joined the Army.
Jesus Christ.
Right?
So then you were in boot camp.
All right.
Almost
literally. Well, I called my parents. I said, "Hey, join the Army." And they're like, "Oh, Jesus Christ, that's not for you." They were right. I was wrong.
Right.
Just because they were dysfunctional, broken, and mentally ill, and I'll get into the mental illness aspect and as we discuss this, but just because they were that unhealthy, it did not mean that they had some wisdom.
Right.
It's just that I was searching for things that I was still not conscious of. And so, boom, spontaneously joined the military. I do the delayed entry program. It's probably June, July timeframe when I join. I'm not leaving until September, October. Spend some time in Utah, end up flying back to Pennsylvania to spend time with family before I actually mobilize to basic training. So that takes place like September, October 1993 that I actually go to basic, or 92. I can't remember the years anymore. So yeah, it was October of 92 that I actually go to basic. Go to basic, Fort Leonard Wood. I'm a combat engineer. Go through my training there. It's awesome. It's cool. Whatever. New experience. Not much to say about it other than that. I eat it up. I give my heart and soul to the military. Completely just pour my heart into it. And finish basic, finish AIT, go to Fort Benning, end up in 3rd Brigade, 24th ID, mechanized infantry brigade, and I'm in mechanized infantry division, and I'm a combat engineer, 12 Bravo, explosives, landmines, that kind of thing, and then within a matter of months, we're mobilized to Somalia, and it's just my platoon. It's not division wide, it's not battalion wide. It's just 25 guys were selected, placed in this platoon, and then deployed. And there was a reason for that, but we don't really need to get into the details, So go to Somalia, like I said, like we were talking about earlier, and have a lot of experiences that are eye-opening and traumatic while I'm there.
Right.
Again, I don't really feel the need to expound upon those.
No need.
It's nothing prolific or profound. It's just like, it seems trivial now.
I wouldn't say trivial. Trauma's not trivial, but trauma's trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like whatever traumatized you, like we're all different. So I'm more interested in what changed, how did it change, and when did you start noticing the change? Did you notice the change, or did you just shift? I know when I was over there, I just came back and I was more aggressive. Like, I didn't feel like I changed. It's just now looking back, I can see the difference before and after.
Okay. Well, I mean, there are events, like I'm saying, there are events that were traumatizing, but there were just events that were everyday events that I feel like we could probably just talk for hours about Somalia. And then talk for hours about Bosnia. Then talk for hours about
talk about Ukraine.
Right. And then circle back and talk about Cambodia or all these other places in Ukraine. And now we're in Ukraine. But I changed, and I didn't notice it then, but as I look back now, I remember when we were pulling out of Mogadishu, we were pulling out of Somalia collectively, the military, the United States. We were pulling out because after Black Hawk Down, it changed the dynamics of how we functioned and operated there. And then President Clinton at the time, decided to put an axe, into the whole Operation Continue Hope, I think at that time. So March timeframe in 94 is when they're pulling us out. And I can remember right now in this moment as we talk about it, thinking that I didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
I did not want to leave Mogadishu. And it was that conflict within. Yeah. Because the experiences that I had there made me feel like, 1, I was changed. 2, I was different. 3, I had a deep hatred for my country. And it was just, and I can, I remember there was maybe a sympathetic response to wanting to help the people there, but at the same time hating them as well because of the conflicts that were there, and the conflict of being a soldier on the ground in a theater like that, and the conflicts of being a peacekeeper when you're trained to be a soldier and a killer and a combatant. Yeah. Which is extremely confusing, especially when you're young and psycho-emotionally already set up to be unstable. Which we will get into as well. Yeah. Right. So, interesting topic is like VA. The VA has done studies on peacekeepers versus like actual combat soldier experiences, and there are very high incidents or very high rates of traumatic responses to peacekeeping operations.
Because they're not mentally prepared for it.
Well, we're not trained for it. we're not psychologically prepared for it.
Oh,
You go into these conflict, because they're conflict zones that you are essentially neutered.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to operate in the way that you are trained and or conditioned and or programmed to operate. So it's not just a psychological process that is confusing and conflicting. It's conflicting to the nervous system, because everything that we are conditioned to respond to in the military is autonomically programmed in our nervous system. So when you're responding to a threat, you're responding to neutralize a threat. So when you perceive a threat, and let's say on a humanitarian mission, your body processes that threat, your mind processes that threat, you're conditioned to eliminate the threat, but you can't eliminate the threat. So you have to restrain those responses within your nervous system. And where does it go? Where does that energy go? It becomes internalized. And so we become extremely conflicted, angry, depressed, almost rage filled. And as I look back now, I realize, as I've reconnected with guys that I've served with, as I've met more and more individuals who have been in peacekeeping operations, it's amazing how conflicted they are, because I left Somalia thinking I'm the only one who's fucked up. Because we didn't talk about it back then. It's the early 90s. We didn't have the same awareness.
Still don't talk about it. I don't feel
like. But at least we have the internet.
Right.
People are all over the web. There's information all over the web.
That's right. You're before the internet.
Yeah. Like I am a dinosaur.
Did they have cell phones? Was it just like one of those Zach Morris phones? Anyways, but go ahead.
No cell phones.
So we weren't as connected. So the information wasn't as available.
We didn't have that kind of. So and it was not discussed. Same thing with TBI. I was in a blast over there.
Yeah.
To go to the VA now and say, I was in a blast in Somalia.
Yeah.
And they're like, what are you talking about? Why didn't you go to a medic? Why didn't you go to the medical station and get an assessment? And it's like, hey doc, it's 1993. It's 1994.
Yeah.
Think about it. But they can't relate to that because they're still confused. And it's like, well, it's TBI. That's the procedure. Well, that wasn't the procedure in 1993. That wasn't the procedure in 1994. Yeah. That only became a procedure a decade later.
It wasn't the procedure when I was there. Yeah.
Right. But it's what comes up when I, go down that avenue of approach to seek treatment for at least initial TBI, because that would be my initial TBI. Et cetera, et cetera. Interestingly enough, that incident, which was a mine strike, would then later be taught. That's when I was a combat engineer. That mine strike would later be taught as a problem in EOD school.
Yeah.
So years later, I'm going through EOD school, and boom, this instructor starts talking about this incident in Somalia, and I'm like, boom, I was an eyewitness. I was right there, and it blew up in front of me. Literally like within 20, 25 feet.
Yeah.
So I was able to give hands-on, eyes-on, relatable experience back to the class and back to that instructor, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just kind of like an offshoot here on, what we're talking about. But So you had depression. Oh yeah, I come back. Now,
did you self-medicate? Did you not medicate?
Yeah, because I've always been an on-again, off-again drinker. Yeah. So it's never been something that's a constant in my life. So I come back from Somalia. We come back, and I had gone from like a super hyped up, like high functioning PT type stud, that the unit really looked up to and, had high hopes for. And, I went from E1, I went into the military as an E1, so E1 to E4 in 11 months, which is pretty quick. It's a pretty rapid progression. Combat arms, you get promoted quickly, but I just happened to, get to that point within 11 months, which is good. There was a lot of promise for me. And then I was just an entirely changed individual. And, we've talked in depth about this, but, come back and immediately I'm withdrawn. I'm combative, violent. And I'm not a big dude. I'm sitting here in front of you and that, like I'm a little dude. However,
so
little, right? But like big energy, big feisty energy, big feisty fuck you energy. And I remember, they gave us like, and let me talk about this first, like redeployment. What a mindfuck redeployment is, so we're pulling out of Mogadishu, and this contributes to some of the issues or whatever. We're pulling out of Mogadishu. Let's just say it's a Sunday. They put us on a ship because they don't want aircraft to be shot down during the final stages. And as we're some of the last coming out, and the Marines come in to cover our retreat, they put us on these ships. We circle around the Indian Ocean for a few days. We pull into a port in Kenya and then fly out from there. Within 24 hours, you're landing in the United States. Mm-hmm. So you're literally surrounded by Somalians with AK-47s. You're retreating. You've just had your asses handed to you, for whatever reason, whether it's Black Hawk Down and all of these other successive experiences that took place over there. So you're defeated, you're young, you're confused, like, what were we doing there? Why were we doing this? Why did we let all those guys die and not do anything about it? Why did we, turn Mogadishu into, what we turned it into, et cetera, et cetera. And then you literally like wake up a few days later and you're back in the land of the big PX. You're back in the land of McDonald's and milkshakes and pizza and white people, America, the United States. And so you go from the United States to abject poverty within 24 hours because you've just flown around the world in a C-5 land. You're given your bullets. You're sent out, to patrol for 6 months and do whatever, countermine operations. Boom. And they're like, hey, you're out of here. You're done. Pack your bags. Now you're on a ship. Now you're on a C-5. Now you're flying back to the United States. You land at Fort Stewart. You're in a Chinook. You're flying back to Fort Benning. You land. No one's there. It's dark. It's late. It's 2 a.m. You've just pissed yourself because you're so fucking cold because you're wearing desert camis and it's winter, And it's just this, it's all surreal, boom, they bus you back to your barracks, and then they're like, okay, you got 4 days leave. There's no reprocessing. There's no way to kind of like,
stabilize.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's the 90s. It was considered a low intensity conflict peacekeeping mission. It wasn't combat. It wasn't war. Right. And so 4 days leave, we jump in a truck and drive back to Pennsylvania because that's where my buddy and myself were from. And I remember he lived near Penn State. And so we hit a few bars. I think I had turned 21 while I was in Mogadishu. And I remember this big bouncer, Penn State, State College, Pennsylvania, lots of bars. It's a party town, party school. And this bouncer says to me, he looks at my military ID, and this is back before the nice
before people
ID cards, right? Yeah. These are like the laminated cards you could peel apart, and you could make a fake ID out of them. Well, mine's peeled because it had been in the desert for 6-7 months, and this huge bouncer, he's probably 6 something. I'm 5'6", probably weighed 130
with your heels on,
35. Your mom's heels. I'm still wearing your mom's heels. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Sheridan. Anyway.
Bouncer.
Yeah. Joe, stay focused. All right. Anyway, this bouncer says, your ID is fake. I just got off the fucking plane from Mogadishu. I've gone through all these shitty experiences. And of course, even though I did not join because I thought I was a red, white, and blue patriot, there are those processes that happen to you while you're on deployment that can kind of like affect your mindset or change your mindset. So, of course, I have some of that. Like, dude, I just went through 6 months of hell, sacrificing.
Elevated,
right. And so, sacrificing, living in shit. Literally living in shit.
I've earned the right to go in here.
I have earned the right to go in here, but not only that, I am 21.
Right.
And you just called me a liar, so it's like a disrespect.
Yeah.
You've just disrespected
But on the
me.
scale of things, super minor, which I imagine you reacted very calmly.
No. I leapt out of your mom's heels. And I mean, I literally went over this table and just grabbed onto the guy. And at that point I was at his height as I was on the table.
And he stood up.
Right. Right. But that's how violent and aggressive I had become, and how reactive I had become. And of course, it's not just a psychological process. It's an autonomic process in how our wiring system, our nervous system, is now programmed to respond to a threat. Even disrespect is a threat.
Yeah, it's a threat to your moral fiber. You as a person. So maybe not physical threat, but I find that it was really hard for me to separate those.
Yeah.
Physical threat as like
It's a threat.
It was all threat. Everything was a threat. But honestly, I lived as though there was a threat all the time, everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was just the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, this combative, violent, super aggressive, aggro type person who would also fall into depressions and what have you. So it's like I could be extremely intense, but also extremely apathetic and lethargic. And so that's where, boom, unbeknownst to me again, you know, in hindsight, I'd later be diagnosed bipolar.
Right.
You know, so the ultra highs and lows. Right. And I was accustomed to, prior to that, I was accustomed to always being more hypomanic, manic. Right. But I was yet to experience a true manic episode, but experienced hypomania. I would soon experience my first manic episode soon after that. Right. But I would not know that that's what it was. And then, of course, I was already beginning to experience the depressive episodes. So the trauma, the PTSD or the trauma responses also aggravated what was already probably there and latent. From upbringing, from family, childhood.
Which there's a really good correlation, causation between ACEs and PTSD.
Exactly. So the conditions were ripe to bring on what I was already predispositioned to experience, which was bipolar 1. You know, you can say bipolar 1, bipolar 2. Bipolar 1 might be considered worse or more severe. So I was gifted with the more severe variation of bipolar. But like I said, it would be a decade before I actually received the bipolar diagnosis, and I would go through a lot more experiences that would traumatize me, re-traumatize me, and eventually hospitalize me with a very complex case of post-traumatic stress and bipolar 1. And so gaining a definitive diagnosis was extremely difficult, but at the same time, my intelligence level allowed me to be extremely high functioning. Now that wasn't me just saying, hey, I'm awesome, I'm smart. It's just realizing in hindsight.
Where you could put it in a little box, do what you need to do, and then go back and you have to open the box behind closed doors or whatever you're doing. Yeah.
And because I was already someone who was constantly analyzing and assessing and self-gauging, I was able to step out of my illness.
Yeah, you're self-aware.
And be aware enough, but also be ignorant to the fact that I thought that's what was normal. I thought everybody was like that. So it didn't really seem dysfunctional to me.
Right.
You know, even though people were always like, you're not right.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I'm like,
you're
no.
Like, sure, whatever.
Like, yeah, whatever.
We're
you're
like
crazy.
this.
You're all like, this is
You
norms.
do this when you go home too, right?
Right. This is totally normsies. Right. And, you know, like this high functioning GI who could also just slip into this complete lethargy and apatheticness. Well, then eventually 1995 rolls around. I'm completely disillusioned with the military, completely disillusioned with the United States, completely disillusioned with just life in general. So Somalia had that big of an impact on me to make me just like completely shift.
Shining star in the unit.
Into
just shit.
Just a complete, at least a shit bag in their eyes.
Right. You know, drunk.
Right.
Fight.
Right. But the thing is too, the drinking lasted briefly.
Right.
You know, so I was able to cut myself off of that again.
Yeah.
You know, and just be like, I'm done drinking. You know, that lasted a few months or whatever, back, you know, returning from Somalia, Mogadishu, etc. And then I was like, fuck this, I'm done with the military. Like, you know, why would I want to go into war with these guys or this unit or these people or this institution that did what it did in Somalia?
Yeah.
And left these rangers, or left whomever to just die.
Yeah.
You know, so just the ineptness, the lack of leadership, the lack of decisiveness, the fact that, you know, a lot of people don't know enough about the history of Somalia and how convoluted it was and how, you know, President Clinton at the time, you know, had made deals and, you know, essentially we're just, you know, thrown out to be pawns. And, you know, that's, you know, that was the realization. And of course there are deeper realizations that come with that. And it would take years and years upon years and more deployments to like solidify that understanding of how we're utilized and how we're used and abused. And also, of course, coming back and being treated the way that I was treated, not only by my peers and the military, but also the VA system.
Right.
You know, so being discarded, being essentially belittled.
I had a couple people come on and they discussed like fracturing their core beliefs.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
in the sense of like, you're going over there to fight for your country, fight for your freedoms, fight for, you know, do that kind of thing. And these individuals, like when they got over there and they realized that to them, that's not what they saw. That's not what they experienced. Did you experience something like that as well as notice a shift on a personal level?
I never had the belief that I was going to fight for anyone's freedom. You know, especially you know, like Somalia. How is it that I am going to Somalia to fight for the freedom and the freedom of the United States?
Right.
You know, it was a peacekeeping mission to go to clearly feed, protect the Somali people.
So you didn't feel like Somalia had any impact on our economic?
on our economic viability?
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, anyway.
But it had nothing to do with the freedom of the American people.
Right.
Right? It had to do with geopolitics. Right?
Right.
Geopolitics through peacekeeping.
Okay.
Through the use of force. This M16 is going to subdue you so that we can further our agenda as a nation geopolitically.
Right.
You know, under the guise of peacekeeping and under the guise of humanitarian efforts.
Yes.
You know, and there are reports that have come out. There have been books that have been written. We never needed to be there. By the time the United States deployed under the guise of the UN or whatever, under the protection of the UN, vice versa, the famine had already come to a near end.
Right.
And they were beginning to recover. So, but we don't need to go into
I was going to say,
the details
before,
of all that shit.
Yeah, I really want to avoid anything divisive. So religion, politics,
and that's where we're headed.
Skip over those.
That is where we're headed.
I know, right? Let's talk about Jesus.
Especially with this guy.
You can talk about whatever you want.
Right.
But yeah.
But I know we need to stay on point because it's trauma-based. And, you know.
It can be about anything, honestly, because I feel like life experiences, they're all unique, but they're all similar at the same time, you know.
So help me stay focused here.
Okay, so moving forward, you decided to get out of the military.
Yeah.
Did you take medication for any of your issues? Not just medication, like what other coping things? Because big picture, what I like to try to do is you have issues. How did you notice that there was something wrong? What were you doing that were unhealthy patterns of behavior to cope with it? Yeah. And then at what point caused the shift to more of a healthy pattern, as well as what did you do to improve?
Okay.
So
I just had a flashback to a memory prior to the military.
Was I eating ice cream?
No, you were not eating ice cream.
Okay.
Your mom was.
Love you, Mom. Ignore him.
I used to, so I was a party boy in college. I used to climb up, and I remember the first time I climbed up to a second-story apartment and jumped out the window into the hands of football players because I was like the little college mascot. Yeah. And so because the question you had just asked about like dysfunction and coping patterns and mechanisms and stuff like that, and I realized like I was crazy prior to the military. Yeah. Right. Did not know this. You know, I was just kind of
trauma.
High energy, you know, hypomanic, et cetera, did a lot of crazy things, you know, crazy behaviors. I was a class clown, et cetera, did a lot of kind of, whatever. In college, it just kind of intensified and I started to do more physically dangerous things, which then led me into the military. And then I did some things in Somalia that would probably be questionable as well, which led to trauma. And then I got out and, there was the drinking. You just asked about medication. Yes, there was a period of time where I did go on medication. The VA put me on meds, and I think the Army put me on meds, unsuccessfully and successfully. So I would add to that, but since 2010, I've been med-free. Okay. Medication has helped me at various times, but also hindered me at various times. At that period of my life, in the 90s, this would have been the mid to late 90s, I was medicated. However, I was not diagnosed with bipolar at that point. Medications, antidepressants especially at that point, because I don't know, they were probably second generation, I believe, at that time. It was dealing with medications like Paxil and Zoloft and what have you. Paxil would react with bipolar to make it worse. So I became even more manic while I was on this medication. And I don't remember, you know, it actually instigating suicidal ideation, but I was already had suicidal ideation. I was drinking on and off for that period of time. So this is 95, probably 95 to 90, deep into 96. I am drinking heavy. I am married at the time. I've got a young daughter. That didn't last. I check out. I'm a civilian again. I'm just struggling with different things. I moved back to my hometown area. My wife is from that area. We're both kind of like small town Pennsylvania. What am I doing? Again, I'm back into mountain biking, back into skiing, on the GI Bill, going to school, kind of like looking for my path, my pattern, but then at the same time unraveling. Shit's hitting the fan internally. We're young, we're married, I've got PTSD, bipolar, don't know that I have PTSD, don't know that I have bipolar. The VA at this point and the Army says, well, you have depression. Yeah. You're depressed. You take these meds, you'll be fine. There was never like a sit down explanation of what the meds were. At that time, again, no internet, no computer, no way to really research it unless you were really curious, because there was literature out there, I'm sure. Right. But there was no real guidance. I was just kind of like an innocent, naive, unaware person who was in the system, let's say the government, military, veteran system, believing that the system still cared about me. Right. I'd later find out that the system did not care about me, and that's just my experience. I can't speak for whatever, but so they put me on these meds, off and on different meds, various meds. I'm reacting differently to the meds. I'm going to the VA. I'm reporting back like this is what I'm experiencing. And I remember, looking at my file later because we have access to our files, and it's like they're diagnosing me based on these interviews and what have you that I'm schizoid and all of these different things. Well, which makes sense because my depression, my symptomology is also reflective of some of the experiences that I had. And one of those experiences was having that left behind experience in Mogadishu where I'm cut off from my platoon, which only creates paranoia. Yeah. So it's not like your standard everyday post-traumatic stress from like combat stress or something like that, or like maybe being shelled or watching, your friend get blown up by an IED. I was cut off from my platoon and left and thought that I was going to die. I thought that was it, so that created that self-reliance, that independence, it fed into my fuck you-esque independent mindset, perspective, and attitude. Right. And then again, also fed into other layers of dysfunction and belief systems within myself that I was alone, that I only had me, but it also created a very strong sense of resilience within myself. But, and that's...
So this is all downward spiral. It's all compounding. It's getting worse and worse and worse. You're taking the wrong medication. Yeah. So we can all see it's going somewhere bad. Yeah. When you hit bad, like what happened? Is that when you started becoming more introspective, more aware of the internal dialogue?
I'm introspective throughout all of it. Okay. So that's just my personality. So even though all of these things are happening,
you're aware of what's going on, but do you understand what's going on?
No, I'm just aware. I'm constantly questioning. So it's almost like a scab, and I'm constantly picking at the scab. Right. It hurts, but I'm like, what is this? I need to, but I'm not fully cognizant or really fully aware. I'm not a fully functioning aware human being at this time. It's like I would even describe myself as being completely unaware. So this is the mid to late 90s. I finally get onto medication. I believe it's Zoloft at the time. So this is probably 97-ish. Boom, I go on Zoloft and it's smooth sailing. I'm back in college. I'm knocking out, probably 30 credit hours in, no time, in 3.7, 3.9, kind of right around there. But the thing with medication, and especially with me at that time, I go on Zoloft, I'm succeeding, I'm doing well. However, medication makes you feel numb. Yes. Take myself off the meds. Yeah. Because I don't.
Because you want to feel.
I want to feel. Yeah. So I'm already months in, et cetera, et cetera. The marriage has already fallen apart. I've already separated from that. I'm already being isolated and alienated from family. Even though I've gotten my shit together.
But you're numb.
But I'm numb, so I come off the meds, and then some other things happen in my life to make me realize, like, I need to separate myself from family again. And at that point, I pack up my stuff and I head back out to Utah. where I'm like, I'm going to get my life together. And I do. I go out there. I fucking succeed. So for like, there's a period of time over the next few years where I get my shit together. So I'm a mess from like, let's say post Somalia, 94, 95, 96, 97, I get my shit together. And from 97.
Was that all all that you're on Zoloft during that?
No.
Okay. So you did Zoloft for a little bit and then after you're
yes,
no meds.
Exactly. And I did Zoloft for probably a few months and stabilized, did well in school, came off the Zoloft because I wasn't feeling. And, and this is probably 97, 98. I decide 98, 97, 98, I decide to go back out to Utah. I end up going to Utah, going through the state police academy, just rocking it, killing it, succeeding, also pursuing college at the same time. And then comes the hiring processes for getting on with departments. And I'm killing it there as well. However, when it comes to psychological examination and background investigation, I pop on, let's say background, had some issues there only because, for whatever reason, no need to get into it.
Yeah.
Nothing bad. It's just that,
red flag.
Yeah, red flag because of, they spoke with my ex-wife or something like that. And of course I was given, bad gouge. And then, I do really well, but not going anywhere with that. I get on with, I work with the federal government for a bit, work with Salt Lake County for a bit, and then starting to miss, as I'm stabilized and doing well again, I'm starting to miss the camaraderie of the military. I'm also starting to miss the functioning of that environment. So join the National Guard, start going through like SF training as I'm trying to become a cop.
Right.
It's too much, still stable at this time, although I say stable. I'm not on meds. I'm not drinking. I'm just succeeding. But at the same time, I'm still having and experiencing the highs and lows of bipolar and post-traumatic issues. However, it's just not to the point where it's debilitating enough to destabilize me and ruin my life.
Right.
So end up just joining the military, going full-time again, and go in through the EOD program. Find EOD, fucking boom, blow through that, succeed. However, I'm back in active duty, start drinking again. I was able to resist for a period of time, but I'm fine. I'm going out, getting through school, experiencing instability again to some degree.
Right.
The highs and lows of the bipolar, but again, it's not hitting me to the point where I think there's something wrong. It's just that, I'm moody, I'm this, I'm that. Still don't understand that I'm bipolar. Still don't understand that I truly have PTSD. Don't know anything about these things. I'm just in the military, going to EOD, boom, graduate EOD school, go to Bosnia. Like 10 days later, I'm in Bosnia. And I'm just like, this is it. I'm back in my element, loving it, killing it, eating it up. However, I don't play well with others. My experiences from Somalia.
Trust issues,
dependent, like let's say that teamwork environment, that team environment, I'm extremely independent at this point. I don't trust you. I don't want to trust you. Trusting you means you have the power to end my life. And
makes you feel vulnerable.
Right. Yeah. Well, not vulnerable, but not at all. Not vulnerable like in a sense of not wanting to expose yourself to someone, but I've been left behind prior.
Right.
So you have the potential to leave me behind and I could die.
Right.
So I'm not going to entrust my life with you. So I am still going to operate as this independent. And that's what's kind of cool about Army EOD is you operate kind of like individually. So I loved it. I love the kind of the freedom that afforded me. But the guys in my unit, I didn't play well. I was already I'm a difficult person, I think, to get along with.
So difficult.
Yeah, right? Right? I think I am. I know that.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
But I'm just not a team player.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera. Now, all this time you had asked about coping mechanisms. Do I have coping mechanisms?
Yeah, looking back, well, we're going to get there because I feel like we're getting close. When you identified that you do have PTSD, it is PTSD, and you're aware that this is PTSD, and that you're aware of bipolar. And then when you look at retrospect, like what were you doing back then to cope with it that now you're like, that was probably unhealthy? And then what kind of things did you do to improve? that were healthy.
So back then, coping mechanisms, and this is prior to being aware that I have post PTSD,
right?
Prior to being aware that I'm bipolar,
right?
So I'm just living my life,
yeah.
And my life is my coping mechanism, because at this point I'm beginning to design a life around who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am, active duty. How do you maintain an active duty status, an active duty reality in that very team-oriented environment when you've got pretty complex post-traumatic stress issues from childhood that have carried over into the military?
Right.
And then you're also bipolar, and you're having these bipolar features as you're on active duty. And then you're going through an extremely intense training program to become EOD. So one of the things that worked in my favor was I isolate. I spend a lot of time alone. So I'm going through EOD school, and you probably lived in the same building that I did years later, where everyone's doubled up in a room. Then you share a bathroom, and then there are two other guys adjacent in another room. So there's 4 guys essentially sharing bathrooms. Yeah, 2 guys per room.
Yeah.
I skated through that entire year of school without a roommate.
I had one briefly, and then after that he got kicked out, and then it's like they forgot about my room.
Yeah.
And it was amazing.
And same situation.
Yeah.
Whereas me being Army, I had been prior service, so there, me coming in that status, and I don't want to say we have clout, because we don't have clout. It's just that there was an NCO who had a lot of respect for me, and I don't know if that played into it, and I don't know if he was aware, but I made it through that school without a roommate. Now, if I had a roommate, which I did for like a few weeks until he failed and rolled out, and then that was it, but it was the most stressful time in my school, in my schooling, when I had a roommate for like 3 weeks.
Yeah,
I was just hoping for him to roll.
Yeah.
And he was a young private as well. And here I am, kind of a more experienced older soldier at the time. But if I had had a roommate throughout that program, I probably would not have made it. Because of the close quarters intimacy and the way that I gauge and cope with my issues is through isolation, being alone, and having to constantly self-regulate.
Yeah, we talked about that similar when we worked together at QC.
Yeah.
And we do like UXO work, and QC role is very independent.
Yeah.
You don't have to work with anyone. You don't have to talk to anyone all day long. You do reports. You do spot checks, So, yeah. But yeah, so this was just an overall lifestyle.
Yeah. I was at that point, I'm creating a lifestyle, but I had already been creating a lifestyle from high school, from middle school. So this is just an evolution of that process where I'm out.
You're just getting better at it.
Yeah. I'm out in the world, and I'm functioning as a soldier, as a high functioning soldier with these extremely compounded issues. So anybody that probably knew me or could possibly know me and observe me from from that level would say, wow, like, you're really fucked up, however, I'm really good at keeping people at a distance.
Right.
So even then it's like, I could be the most, and I was extremely popular. Everyone knew me. I fucked with people. I've got that personality. I'm constantly joking, et cetera, et cetera. Cadre knew me. Students knew me. Navy, Air Force, Army, Marines, everybody knew me from every fucking class, and I was just that type of dude. But at the same time, keep your distance. Keep your distance, motherfucker. Yeah. I'm going to keep my distance from you. However, I'm going to joke with you just enough. I'm going to spend just enough time with you. And this wasn't calculated. This is just it was a natural flow. I wouldn't necessarily socialize at night, to the bar scene or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Every now and then I'd be like, okay, I'll go have a few drinks or whatever. But I did my own thing. 99% of the time I do my own thing. And that's what has always kept me balanced. And somehow, even in the military, I always had that flexibility. It's like, how am I getting away with this? How am I able to navigate this reality that tends to be structured and strict and rigid and monitored? How am I able to find a way to navigate within this reality with my issues and maintain my balance and sustain that momentum while maintaining my balance and get away with it?
Right.
But somehow it always just worked.
Yep.
And then even when I deploy, I go to Bosnia. Same thing. I don't remember really having any issues in Bosnia except for personality conflicts, which is common. My personality conflicting with
I've seen it.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's just because, probably because I've become so bizarre in my behaviors and having to self-regulate. Mm-hmm. You know, so like an example would have been like something I was just sharing with you yesterday. You know, when I was out with the translator and out with another tech. And once let's say, their desire is conflicting with my desire, or their intention is conflicting with my intention, and I'm starting to see myself get aggravated and spin out, my reaction now is to, hey guys, I'm going to step out. Mm-hmm. I'm going to, like in that example, I'm going to walk the hour home. You guys go do what you do. Because if I stay here, it's just going to get worse.
Right.
You know, and then of course they want to accommodate my needs, and I'm like, no, don't accommodate my needs.
Yeah.
I'll accommodate my needs. Mm-hmm. And then there's conflict created because now I'm almost, in a way, they probably perceive, or maybe that one person perceives, that I'm sabotaging what he wants to do or what they're doing. And I'm like, look, I'll step out. I'm cool with this. I know what's going on right now. I don't want to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
So don't go out of your way to take me back and then ruin your afternoon. Yeah. I can hike the hour back. It's not a big deal. It's actually going to be healthy for me.
Right.
You know, and then boom, it just turns into a complete shitstorm and catastrophe.
Yeah.
Right. And then we all just end up going our own ways and doing our own thing and blah, blah, blah. Nothing mm-hmm. turned out the way that it should have or could have.
Right.
If they just let me slip away quietly.
Yeah.
Right. Like, hey, let me be me, you be you. I've figured me out, you know, but at the same time, I have learned to really remove myself from situations like that. But because we're new in country, we're excited, we want to see things, I'm kind of like,
build relationships.
Burn relationships. Right.
Yeah.
I'm better at burning relationships than building relationships, right?
Yeah, I would say you are.
I would say you're a unique case because you're a curious individual, right? Mm-hmm. But like people around you who are your friends have also said, like, you're going to let that guy live with you. Right? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you understand what
I was like, absolutely.
Right. because you self-sabotage as well.
All the time. Yeah.
But do you know what I'm getting at there?
Yeah, because like my life would be perfect if I didn't tear it down occasionally. I would be bored. I wouldn't have anything to do.
Right.
Which is something I'm working on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But there's another level to all of this that I haven't even touched on. So underneath all of this is what I call that spiritual level, which is something we haven't even, it's like, boom, I just opened that door to
spiritual, but when we talk spiritual, you're not specifically saying religion, right?
Not at all.
Right.
Not at all.
Right.
Like what I'm saying is, for me, it's an energetic level.
Right.
So it's like I came into this world knowing that there was just this innate knowing that it's not real and I'm just passing through. It's just this innate, conscious understanding that none of this is real. I'm just passing through.
When you say not real, what do you mean?
Illusory.
Okay.
So it created almost like the Buddhist perspective of we create our realities in our own mind. Mm-hmm. Well, there's an individual creation and a collective creation. So I'm not talking about religion, not getting into that, you know. Yeah. I'm just saying that there's just always been this innate knowledge that none of this is real. Mm-hmm. And so just passing through. Right now, I am just playing a role. Mm. And so there's always been this underlying energy propelling me, moving me in a certain direction. Kind of like we were just talking about it. I got through EOD school. How did I get through EOD school in that way? Mm-hmm. You know, because I was aware that on this one level, energetically, that's where I was meant to be.
Right.
And that the universe was going to provide me the opportunity to get through that program in the best way that it could. And so it provided me the opportunity not to have a roommate because that roommate would have been an added stressor.
I completely, well, it's interesting. I see it a little bit different, but I definitely feel as though there's a path, you know, and there's a path that I'm supposed to be taking and I don't have to take it.
Right.
Like I can detour, I can do whatever I want, but I feel as though when I do emotionally, it's challenging as well as it is so difficult. Yeah. Like you're not walking a path.
Difficult.
You're walking like up a hill. It's not easy. Whereas like I kind of feel like I broke free from doing the what I should be doing.
Yeah.
You know, build a family, get a house, do the like, you know, the cookie cutter, like this is what you're supposed to be doing. When I stopped that and started one, healing, finding out who I am, what I enjoy,
Yeah.
you know, and then like the process of like figuring out what that meant, and then qualifying that even deeper and be like, okay, well, what direction and purpose do I want in life? You know, it all, like the doors just all open. It wasn't like one at a time. It was like a hallway of doors open. It's like, this is the way that you're going, which is insane because it led to this podcast, which was absolutely terrifying to do initially, but was freeing once it started.
Right.
And then after that, it led me to definitely leave my last job, which I was like, this is toxic. I don't want to do it.
Was that the job that we were both on?
No, that's the one I got fired from. But
can we talk about that?
No, I don't care.
Can I talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. How funny. But then it led to, you know, this opportunity, which came out of nowhere. And then it was like, holy crap, like,
tea is cold.
Yeah, heat up the water.
That's good.
Well, I want more.
Anyway,
heat up the water. I just thought it was fascinating. It led to this, which has felt, I don't know, zero resistance.
Right.
Like, almost like it was like I was meant to be here for some weird reason, which is insane. Yeah. Like, I don't know why or what's the purpose behind all this, but I'm very excited to figure it out.
Right. That's just it. You know, and that's kind of what I'm referring to. It's just that
we heat up the water.
You want more? Yeah. You probably want more water. Okay. There's a little bit, but
pass it here.
Yeah. So when I speak to spirituality, when I mention that word, it's not religious in nature. It's energetic, and then of course we'll get into what I call true spiritual awakening that happened in Iraq in 2004.
Yeah.
You know, so all of these experiences and all of who and what I am are leading up to this experience in Iraq. So like this whole life of depression and psycho-emotional instability, you know, and then who I am underneath that, constantly questioning. So at this, you know, one of the things I didn't mention is through the 90s, all the way up to this point, I'm exploring religion. I'm asking questions. Going back to Somalia, you know, I was exposed to Islamic culture. And so I'm enthralled. I'm completely mesmerized by this Islamic culture. And
that's loud.
The prayer, the prayer, you know, the call to prayer. And I would just sit out there and just, you know?
Yeah.
And I was mesmerized. And then, of course, going to Bosnia, the same thing. It's a mixed Christian, Catholic, Islamic culture. So you have three thriving religious cultures, you know, cohabitating together.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's a war as a result.
Yeah.
And then, you know, asking these questions about religion, asking these questions about culture, asking these questions about humanity.
Yeah.
Like, why the fuck are we doing these horrific things that we do to each other that I've seen, that you've seen? Why are we violent? Yeah. Why do we continue these patterns? Why is it that if there's this theory of evolution, why are we not evolving consciously? Why are we still killing each other? And here we are in Ukraine. It's 2022. Right. My first war goes back to 1992 or 1993.
Yeah.
Yours goes back to
2003. Yeah.
2003, right? And here it is. It's like a lifetime of conflict, a lifetime of war, and it's like nothing's changed in my life.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed over the last 2,000 years. You know, we have advances in science. We have advances in engineering. We have advances in the means of killing each other.
Yeah.
But we're still killing each other.
Yeah.
You know, so it's these things. It's like, you know, I'm constantly like, and that it's in itself, like when you begin to question at those levels and you begin to break down culture, you begin to break down society, you begin to break down yourself, it can create its own depression. Because
I struggled with that for a little bit. Yeah. It was like, in my head, every decision was a choice. Every choice was pointless.
Yeah.
You know, because it goes from point A, birth, point B, death. And everything in between was just like nonsensical. It's like, well, who cares? And nothing has weight. And it's like, well, it does a bit. Yeah. You know, like it may impact your life. It may impact someone else's. But in 100 years, it absolutely did nothing. Yeah. You know, meant nothing.
Right.
So then I was like, well, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately like, that was the lowest I ever was. And then after that, it was like, okay, well, what's my purpose? My purpose is to enjoy life. What does that mean? I don't know. Let's find out. What do I love? What do I want to do? And then here we are.
Yeah.
Clearly I want to be in Ukraine.
Right. Yeah.
That makes no sense, but here we are.
Makes sense to us.
It does-ish, yeah, because it's purposeful, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
So, PTSD.
PTSD.
You got diagnosed when in bipolar.
Well, I was just going to mention
self-aware.
Like I just mentioned, depression as a result of inquiry, of self-inquiry,
Right, okay.
or even inquiring into the nature of existence and inquiring to the nature of reality. There's a depression that can come with that.
Right.
And then, I had mentioned.
You're scratching the mic.
I'm scratching my chest hair because I'm like part monkey.
Yeah, you are.
But existentialism.
Yes.
So existential, depression, existential mania, existential suicidal ideation. So it's not just like, oh, I want to die because I've got, trauma-related issues. I want to die because humanity itself is completely broken.
Yeah.
And so like why do I want to be a part of this? So it's like, it's at the soul level at that point. It's not at a psychological level. It's at the soul level. But we can move on from that because we'll probably circle back. But what you were just saying, when did I get diagnosed with PTSD?
When did you know that you had PTSD?
I first noticed that something was off.
Yeah.
And I think it was 2003.
When were you able to put a label on it? Like, be like, oh, this is what it is. Like, this makes sense.
Maybe a few years after 2003.
Okay.
So 2003, I'm back from Bosnia. I'm out of the military again.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm just contracting, doing the same type of contracting work that we do, on the civilian side. And I am contracting out of Massachusetts. I'm working with, I think, a robotics company. And, right.
Yeah.
So I'm working with a company that makes the bomb disposal robot. And I'm walking back from the grocery store. It's winter, it's night, it's dark, and I've got a beautiful apartment that is costing me next to nothing in this great little town outside of Boston, and it's just fantastic. However, I'm also digging deep into things, and I'm noticing things about myself.
When you say digging deep,
noticing things about myself, I'm starting to ask questions.
What are you doing to dig deep?
At that point, I'm, Jesus Christ. I'm just beginning to become more aware. Okay. So I'm reading books at this point. Like, I'm reading all through these years.
Books?
So at this point, I'm reading books on Buddhism.
Okay.
So I'm introduced to Buddhism, introduced to Taoism, and I'm introduced to past life regression.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understand what that means.
Yeah.
But let's back up. Buddhists and Buddhism. Religion, not religion? What do you think?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it can be interpreted as a religion. It's become a religion.
It
is a philosophy.
Right.
It's a path to enlightenment that has become a religion.
Yeah.
Same thing with Christianity, a path to enlightenment that has become a religion.
Yeah, when I first started exploring the OG guy, it was like, okay, I was following around. I was like, if he was around today, he would basically be like a really good psychologist. It seemed like teaching like detachment.
Or maybe just a bomb tech.
Or maybe, I don't know. Yeah. But I just always thought it was like, I didn't see it as a religion as much as like a way to detach from the stresses of the world. So I don't know. I was just curious what you thought. So then.
But there are also deeper levels of Buddhism. Like true Buddhism is metaphysical. And then all the Buddhism that's now pushed in the West is non-metaphysical.
Yeah.
In order to get to that metaphysical level, you really have to dig deep into Buddhism and Taoism. But a lot of the shit that's fucking manufactured and pushed, to the West, to the average Western person is, promoting kindness, promoting. I'm going to throw this out the fucking window.
You can. Would you like me to turn?
Yeah, I would like you to turn my cell phone off because it's not.
Do you have a password?
I do. I can tell you it because I don't really care. It's 5614.
5614.
I'm going to change that now. What was I going to say?
Western's not metaphysical.
Well, anyway,
it's all about being kind, being nice.
Yeah, the shit that's pushed now is about kindness and like, let's say, like maybe simple meditative, breath work, et cetera, et cetera. But the true depth and the true teachings of Buddhism are beyond the comprehension of just like the average person who's probably practicing Buddhism.
Right.
You know, so it's much easier to teach kindness. It's much easier to teach these things than it is to teach, you know, true metaphysical teachings that probably nobody's going to grasp, or 1 in a million might grasp. So one night I'm walking back from the grocery store. I've got like a bag of canned goods and just general groceries in my bag. And I'm approaching this train trestle. I have to walk under this train trestle. It's dark. I notice my body become extremely tense. And
I just turned it off.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know how to use an Android.
I know, I'm the same way. I was like, I don't even know how to turn this off right now. So I noticed my body clench. I grab the bags. I'm not someone who carries weapons.
Yeah.
Never have been that kind of guy. But I grab the bags, preparing to use them as a weapon because there's canned goods in there. So if I have to, I will swing and hit someone. That is the moment that I became a conscious human being. That is the moment that I became consciously aware that something is not right.
Right.
And this is 2003. So I'm born in 72. So we're like at 82, 92, 2000, 2002, so I'm 30 years old and just becoming a consciously aware human being.
Right.
And so that is the turning point in my experience, in my spiritual development, in my human development, in my maturity. But now it's 2022. So it's taken 20 years from that point to truly heal and become who I am now in this room, looking at you face to face.
But do you think it's ever going to stop? Do you think you're always healing / improving?
What I mean by healing is I'm at a point where I can actually function on a day-to-day level without being buried with my trauma, without being buried with my instability, without being buried by, like, here I am, I'm in a war zone after being completely destroyed in a war zone 15, 16 years ago.
Right.
So the fact that I was able to do that much work to put me back into an environment.
To be comfortable and self-aware, like, I'm going to go back there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and you had asked me, like, what was it like? Like, you and I have talked extensively about this. So as soon as the Ukraine opportunity arose, as soon as it became a reality, I was extremely anxious.
Before we get into that.
Yeah.
Because that's definitely something I want to get to, but I don't want to rush it. So when you realized something was wrong, that led to understanding what was wrong.
No, it led to an inquiry into what was wrong.
Okay.
Not a true understanding. It was just like, oh, I finally understand.
Right.
This is
and then you're like, I want to understand what this is. Right. And then
something's not right. Yeah.
So that led to that. And then once you realized what it was, then you explored, I don't know, I'm asking, did you explore ways to improve it?
No. I explored ways to understand it.
Okay.
So I dug deeper. I dug deeper and dug deeper. And I've never been like, let's say, oh, here's a problem. I need to improve that. It's like, here's a problem. Why is that problem there? Do you know what I mean? That's a completely different approach.
Yeah, my brain works totally different, but I get it. Yeah, mine's like, there's a problem, fix it. How do I fix it? Where does it go? Like, which is, in a sense, I do have to do a root cause. Like, okay, where does this problem come from?
Yeah.
But I'm always more attentive and purposefully moving toward, I want to fix that.
Yeah. No, and I think for me, it's kind of almost the opposite. There's a problem. And yes, I'm very fix a problem oriented. But for me, it's fixing the problem is getting to the root cause of the problem, like you were just saying, root cause analysis, but really understanding. And at this point, I'm beginning to open up in my understanding of awareness. Let's say Buddhist awareness, meditative awareness, conscious awareness. And I'm also on a trajectory at this point to put myself in acupuncture school. So I'm already exploring ways out of contracting, and I want to go to acupuncture school.
Why was that?
Why?
Yeah, did you find it beneficial for you?
Well, I don't even think I had an acupuncture treatment in my life at this point. It was just like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah. How do I become one of them?
I loved Taoism, right? And I was like,
acupuncture was like, sign up here, let's put your bicycle in the back of the car.
I'm just riding my mountain bike, around Boston, and I looked over at this dude, and I was like, how do I become one of you? And the next thing I know, I'm in his car, and we're going to acupuncture school.
Right. He's like, I have some chocolate. He's like, man.
I'm like, I love chocolate. Right. You a chocolate?
I love chocolate in vans. It doesn't have any windows, but okay.
Right. So at that point, that's where I'm headed. I'm headed like, I want to be an acupuncturist. I want to study Chinese medicine. You know?
I turned it off. I don't
It's
know
not
how
off.
it's beeping.
Anyway, I got,
Did you turn it back on?
it was never off, Joe. Anyway, where were we?
Two, like, baby boomers.
Oh,
no,
shit.
that's the wrong way.
Power off. There we go. Thanks.
That's what I hit.
Anyway,
Yeah.
phone is off.
Okay.
Becoming aware, and so at this point, like I said, so there's the desire, the end goal is to end up in acupuncture school. Now, I just had a horrible breakup, like an ugly breakup, which often causes me distress because again, there's a history of family issues.
Told you.
Mother issues.
Yeah. Abandonment issues, trust issues.
Right. All of these things.
And then everything compounds it, reinforces it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So this breakup essentially ripped me open. And that's where this is headed. But it opens me up on an energetic spiritual level to which I had not experienced prior.
Right.
So I'm actually done with life. I'm suicidal, but suicidal in a new way, not just suicidal like, oh, my life sucks, or suicidal like maybe in a responsive way, but I'm opened up on an existential level at this point. This is where the existential reality becomes reality to me. Right. So I'm no longer living from like a psycho-emotional perspective, but a psycho-emotional awareness and a spiritual awareness. I'm existentially burned out. I'm existentially done with humanity. I'm existentially done with living. I'm existentially done with being in this world because it's broken, you know, and because I had just lived through a life of trauma and abuse and just have really truly seen the ugliness of humanity. And it was all brought upon by this relationship that had ended horribly. But what it did is it ripped open all of the wounds. It ripped open let's say, the birth wound, the mother wound, the existential wound from the beginning of time, you know, and so that's where things kind of get like a little complex in my spiritual explanation, my energetic explanation, because it becomes essentially metaphysical. But at the same time, I have to live in the practical world. I got to pay bills. I got to do all these things. But I land this contract, and you were just talking about being in Ukraine. It just worked. It fit. Well, winning this contract was a really lucrative contract. I was like, I could retire in a year. I'm done. I'm out. I just scored. You know, it was working with this robotics company, and I was going to go to Afghanistan and Iraq, and I was going to be their representative for this robot. And boom, after a year, I could cash out or whatever. It would extend. And done with that.
I'm just waiting for it.
What?
So I was just waiting for it to do it again.
God. It's thrown me off. So where am I?
Shoot. Existential. You're done with
Boston
the world.
Robot Company.
You just cashed out with.
Well, I was going to,
Yeah.
you know, so contract falls apart. But at the same time, you know, that I'm going through the process of being involved in this contract, I feel my death. Like literally, it's like I'm kicked in the gut every day. My insides are turning upside down. I feel like I've sold out.
Yeah.
Because I didn't agree with the war at all, like the Iraq, Afghanistan wars.
Yeah.
Period. I was totally against him. I knew it was a farce, you know, from my perspective.
Yeah.
You know, blah, blah, blah. And I knew that it was just the continuation of the destruction of man by man, you know, and I knew that there was manipulations, etc. So this is just me, my perspective. So here I'm awarded this opportunity to go to this war as a representative for this company, assisting EOD teams. However, morally, it felt disgusting to me. And ethically, it felt disgusting to me. And all of it, spiritually, it felt disgusting to me. And all I did was I felt my death. I sensed my death. Well, unconsciously, either I sabotaged it or the universe was like, pulled it out from underneath me.
I feel like I had the same experience when I'm going against the grain, going against the path that I feel like's there for me. Like that's how I feel emotionally,
right?
Physically, like everything. It's like every day, every second is overwhelming.
Right. And I know you're an Iraq, Afghanistan vet, and I'm not like trying to throw shit in your face.
No, that's fine.
This is just
like,
me.
This is your perspective on life, and you do whatever you want.
Yeah, but it can be triggering. You know what I mean? Because even if somebody like
it could be, someone who's like, that was very important in my life.
Yeah.
Like that time I did this for those people and it felt rewarding, because I think there was a time there I was really against the Afghan war.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was like, whatever, because I didn't experience a lot of good moments or good people while I was there. Right. And I worked a lot, like one as EOD and then again as a contractor over there. And like, I didn't have a lot of good experiences with the people. Yeah. So I was like, I was done with it. And then I had a friend that was talking to me and he's like, how could you say that? Yeah. Because he's like, we help, like when we were over there, like women are getting education. Yeah. Women historically weren't able to get educations. The sex trafficking went down for the women and the boys. It was like we did have a positive impact. So for me, that changed my perspective. Like, okay, we did do some good, but I also seen a whole lot of bad. Right. So it's like, man, I don't know. Teach their own on how they feel about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's the same thing with Somalia and Bosnia. It's like, there was good that was done. Yeah. Temporarily. Yeah. But there was also bad. I mean, Bosnia, the UN was involved in sex trafficking. Yeah. It's like, organizations that are designed to, not to say that the UN went into sex traffic. It's just that individuals who were working for the UN, who were involved in law enforcement even, were involved in sex trafficking. Contractors involved in sex trafficking, things like that. And it's just like, there's good and there's bad. And again, this goes back to like Buddhist philosophy, Taoist philosophy. Yin within yang, yang within yin, good within bad, et cetera, bad within good. It's not just good and bad, black and white. But everything felt wrong about this. Eventually, the contract just fell apart. Right. Just as I was about to board a plane to go to Germany and start my $1 million year, Yeah. It fell apart. And when it fell apart, I just like exhaled. But at the same time, as I'm going through this contractual win and prepping and learning about their processes, I'm going through past life regression. I'm learning about Buddhist meditation. I'm learning about past life experiences. Not only that, I'm open. So I realized I've always been an energetically sensitive human throughout my life. I've always been aware of, like, let's say, spiritual energy. I've always been aware of these things. I just grew up in an environment that didn't nurture that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a sensitive individual who grew up in a very tough environment, who lived a tough life, which helped harden me to some degree, but I never lost that sensitivity, that spiritual awareness. Right. That spiritual awareness was now making itself aware to me that this is who you are. You've gone through these traumatic experiences. You've gone to war. You've been in the military. You grew up in an abusive environment. You grew up in a sick environment. Yes, you're bipolar. And a lot of times when you're bipolar, you have spiritual experiences. A lot of times when you're bipolar, you have psychotic experiences. A lot of times when you're bipolar, you have visions. You hear voices. You have hallucinations. So when you go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you are now crazy. Right. You are hallucinating. You don't have spiritual experiences. You are this. I am smarter than you. I am degreed. I am a doctor. I've gone through the systems methods of programming. And the system says that I am a doctor. I am intelligent. I know more than you. You know less than me, because you're bipolar. And now we're diagnosing you with either, post-traumatic stress or bipolar or schizophrenia. You know less, and that has been my experience in dealing with Western medicine. That's been my experience of dealing with therapists and therapeutics. But what that has done for me is it's pushed me further into myself. It's like, okay, you're going to treat me as I am less than. I'm smarter than you, and I know that. That can be misconstrued as bipolar, elevated sense of self. So it's like, okay, they're going to see that as an elevated sense of self. I'm fucked. How do I navigate?
There's no win.
Right. There's no win. Yeah. Everything that I say to them, they're just going to say, that's bipolar. That's bipolar. And it's like, how do I navigate this? How do I figure my life out? Knowing that, just because this individual has an education, just because this individual may have multiple degrees and I do not, how do I navigate this reality where I know myself so much, and my illnesses, even if I don't have diagnoses yet. I know myself to a degree because I've just spent the last 30 years diagnosing, assessing, evaluating, and being aware of myself and becoming more aware. So again, this is a process that's taken time. And so I get to the point where 2003, that falls apart. 2004, I wake up one morning and I'm like, I'm going to Iraq. Like, so here's a spiritual awakening, and most people who are spiritual would be like, that's anti-spiritual. Why would you go to war if you're spiritual? You know, that's not spirituality. You know, spirituality is tight yoga pants and being a vegan and, you know, namasteing all day long. And it's like, no, that's fake spirituality. That's the appearance of spirituality. Spirituality is just living your life as consciousness itself. Yeah. No good or bad. It's just consciousness, experiencing consciousness within consciousness. And one day it's just very clear. Just like you just said, Ukraine just felt right. Going to Iraq the second time.
It wasn't so much it just felt right. It was like, it was happening.
Exactly.
And it was like, I could either fight it or I could go another path, which would have been less rewarding, but yeah.
Right. And that's exactly what Iraq was like the second time around, just a few months later. Woke up one morning, looked over at my girlfriend, who was the same woman that I had this horrible breakup with. And we were still in this tumultuous kind of dance, this dynamic that was so horrible. And I looked over at her and I just said, I'm going to Iraq. And a lot of it was to get away from her. And a lot of it was because I had this need to follow this spiritual sense. And then at the same time, there was a desire to die. And I was done. I was done living. And so but I felt good about it. I felt like, this is it. This is where I'm going. This is where I want to be. This is where I need to be. And this feeling within me is pushing me in that. I literally woke up, made a phone call, and boom, they're like, yeah, drive to Texas. You'll deploy in 2 weeks. You know, because that's how we, you know what I mean? It happened. I woke up, knew it. It's happening. I made the phone call, boom, drove to Texas. And within 2 weeks, I was on a plane and gone with mushrooms. I had a lot of mushrooms. I had a shit ton of mushrooms on that plane. Got them through, you know, the military installation onto the plane. Was on mushrooms when I flew over, you know. Gun in my bag, you know. The police dogs came through. I'm sitting next to MPs on the fucking plane, you know, on this military transport. I'm a civilian contractor now. It's like Starsky and fucking Hutch. I'm loving it. I'm in my element. You know what I mean? Like, I am eating mushrooms with a bag of mushrooms, sitting next to military police with their fucking dogs on a C5, headed over to fucking, like, whatever. We made a few stops, you know, Germany, wherever, blah, blah, blah.
Whatever. Yeah. I don't remember.
You know? Right? We land wherever, Kuwait, spend a few days in Kuwait, get on a C-130, fly over into Baghdad, boom, 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 boom. Have my mushrooms still, you know, and I am on a spiritual journey. Well, the moment that I hit Kuwait, I start to journal. And, but it happened spontaneously. I had no intention of journaling. I had no intention but the moment I hit Kuwait, I was flooded with flashbacks that I never knew I had, memories that I never knew I had, experiences never knew that I had. I had suppressed so much from Somalia, and now it was coming out. Now I was becoming, as a conscious human being, everything that was tucked down, suppressed deep within me was going to come out, and it was going to make itself fucking aware. And I was going to have to process it. I was going to have to process it as I was about to go into a new war zone. And it was fucking overwhelming because...
Process while being re-traumatized.
Exactly. Yeah. While becoming aware of how traumatized I was, but also becoming aware that I'm a spiritual being, a physical being, a neurological being, you know, all of these levels of
Did you have any idea of how to process what that even meant?
That's why I started writing.
Okay.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
You know, I had no background in any of this stuff. I'm reading Taoist books. I'm reading Buddhist books. I'm reading past life regressive books. I'm becoming meditatively aware. I'm becoming energetically aware. I'm becoming so aware of how sensitive I am. And I'm picking up on everything, you know, and then at the same time, when I talk about like spiritual awareness, I'm also talking about spirits. I'm also talking about levels of understanding within the hierarchy of the universe, you know, so things like that. And it's like, boom, even the way you're looking at me, you're like, you are so fucking crazy. Right? Right. And you're a student of psychology. So to me right now, that look you're giving me is like, your eyes are kind of
curious.
You're like, you are fucking
I'm
nuts,
like,
man.
keep talking about the mushrooms in Iraq.
Right?
Like, let's take a journey with your spirits in the universe.
Right. You know, and even prior to this, like that journey cross country from Pennsylvania to Texas, pre-deployment, I'm eating mushrooms. And I'm going like, I'm in West Virginia riding horses. Then I'm camping naked in New Mexico, you know,
with the spirits?
confronting badgers, you know, and it's just like,
I remember that
this
story.
is what this is my life, you know what I mean? So I'm constantly like, I'm on my way to war, but I'm like, I'm going to eat mushrooms and drive cross country, and I'm going to find my spirit animal, and I'm going to do this.
Which is a badger.
Right, which is a badger.
Makes sense.
And
tiny and vicious.
Right? Exactly. And there I am, like, face to face, naked. Like, I am naked with flip-flops and a beach towel wrapped around my neck in the desert in northern New Mexico. And there's this fucking badger at a water hole, and I am like 75 miles to civilization. And I'm looking at this badger, and this badger's looking at me, and I immediately just look at my penis.
That's what he's looking at.
And I'm like, all I imagine is him ripping that off. And I'm like, I am so fucked right now. and again, we're staring at each other, and it's like we acknowledge each other. And it's like, I'm not here. And he just looks at me and he's like, fuck yeah, dude. You know, kind of like, right? Like we're just totally cool with each other. I'm not here to fuck with you, Badger, and you're not here to fuck with me. And it was like, whew. I slowly back away, start walking back to my camp, spend another, you know, let's say night or two camping there, surrounded by wild horses. They're all around my tent. It's just a magical, beautiful experience. I finally get out of that valley, and I'm driving back, you know, through New Mexico on my way to Texas. And then I'm listening to like Native American shows, like radio shows and what have you at the time. Cause this is, again, it's this is 2000.
Did they have cars back then?
They did have cars.
I had a Model T.
I had a Volkswagen Euro van, and they had a CD player. No, it had a tape player. I had a tape player.
Okay.
Might have had a CD player. I can't remember.
Amtrak?
No, 8-track. It's called 8-track, not Amtrak. Amtrak's a train, Joe.
I know, right? I was trying to be funny, and I was like, damn it.
No, your mom and I take Amtrak all the time while listening to 8-tracks.
Yes.
But, and I'm listening to a radio show, and they're talking about the Badger people, Badger medicine. And it's like the Badger tribe or the Badger clan were medicine people. And I'm like, and it's just one of those, like if you've ever been to New Mexico, I don't know if you have or haven't.
Yes.
It's called the Land of Enchantment. I spent years there. Out. Just prior to Iraq, I decided I am moving to New Mexico. So that's why I drove out there and then deployed from Texas. So I moved to New Mexico, like in a matter of just weeks. I'm like, I'm moving to New Mexico. I'm going to look at an acupuncture school. Then I'm going to Iraq from there.
Yeah.
And it all just happened that way. Leave my shit there. Boom. Go down to Texas, the Land of Enchantment. So I go to Iraq, have these experiences, come back to New Mexico and spend years there healing.
Yeah.
And New Mexico is full of acupuncturists, full of shamans, full of all kinds of crazy weirdos that just fit the bill, fit the mold for what I was looking for and what I needed. Because while I'm in Iraq, I'm opening up. I go back to, I am opening up.
Yeah.
I am becoming more aware.
Open the bottle. Everything's suppressed, working its way out.
Right. And it is a chaotic, crazy ride. So the time that I'm in Iraq, I'm an addict. I'm addicted to adrenaline. I'm addicted to putting myself in situations that are going to kill me. And it's becoming more evidently clear that I am pushing myself towards my own destruction and my own death. You know, like I'm standing near.
Do you feel like you wanted to die?
Oh yeah. Unconsciously, I was pushing myself to death.
Yeah.
I was too fearful to actively kill myself. So I was looking for passive ways to kill myself. So like what
I did something very similar with my deployments.
Yeah.
100%. Like I just kept wanting to go back. Subconsciously, I was tired of, I didn't, man, that's a fun thought. The thought was, coming back to normal society and like we didn't have I didn't have any relatability.
Right.
It didn't make any sense because like everybody worries about this trivial nonsense, and it was like, well, I just want to go back over there because I felt like I was doing something meaningful.
And it makes sense.
But also it was like I wasn't afraid of dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, like let's say like the brokenness and destructiveness of war, and then you go back to the brokenness and destructiveness
of society. Yeah, the things that they hold valuable, like the people that they hold up on pedestals, it's like, oh my goodness, are you guys serious? Like there's no moral fiber. But anyways.
Well, there's no character, there's no integrity, but at the same time, it's so vapid and false. Everybody's wearing a mask. At least war is real.
That was something that we noticed while we were here when we were discussing. I don't want to forget about it.
Social
talk about it now.
here.
Yeah, social interactions. People like communicate and it's so smooth.
Natural.
And natural. Whereas I was talking to someone just the other day about like how it's uncomfortable to be in public and stuff like that. And it's like, it's because everyone's pretending.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's
back in the States.
In the States, everyone's pretending to be something, you know, and it's just so weird saying hello to people, you know.
It's not just the States, it's almost like the West. It's the United Kingdom. Like any Western culture has become so, well, how I would say, disconnected from true connective relationship with themselves and of course with others as a result.
Yeah, and with themselves.
We're disconnected from our spirituality.
Yeah. From the end, well, man.
Yeah.
I don't want to like push people and be like, oh, spirituality, like that inner you.
Yeah.
The purpose of why you're here, what you want. We're all unique. We're all different. Like that's in you. Like it's okay to be that.
Yeah.
You know, it's fucking weird. It's probably a little, like people will be like, whoa.
Because it's
like, it's okay to be that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is too, I know you have a goal and intention here and you don't want to, divide and separate people. But at the same time, I'm not here to stroke people's egos. I'm not going to tell you you're a beautiful fucking unicorn. Oh, you're a beautiful unicorn, and
I'm going to make not what you said yesterday.
No, you are a beautiful unicorn. But we're talking to this general populace.
Right.
I'm not here to make you feel good. I'm here to make you feel uncomfortable.
Because uncomfortable is where growth is. Yeah. If you don't feel uncomfortable and you just do everything that you're comfortable doing, then it's like, what are you doing?
And this circles back to my personality and relationships and being around people, and people have a difficult time with me. Because I make them uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And because I don't want to say I thrive in those uncomfortable places because that's where I've spent most of my life, whether it's through trauma or whatever. It is uncomfortable. It's always been uncomfortable in my skin.
Yeah.
It's always been uncomfortable in my body. However, I'm an uncomfortable person, so I know that like I challenge people's conditioning and programming.
Right.
But I also do it intentionally. It's just
You do it full fuckery. It's hilarious most of the time. Which our banter in public really makes people uncomfortable, which is funny too.
Yeah.
But I like that uncomfortableness in life itself because I feel like when you spend your whole life comfortable, your threshold for discomfort is more sensitive.
Yeah.
And it's like that with everything. I think, which is ultimately kind of why I came here, which I guess we'll get to, whenever. Right. Because we're almost there. The only other thing I wanted to hit on is like a summary of the last 20 years. What were some things that you did that you saw that improved the quality of your life? And then after that, I want to jump into where we are. And I know that's so hard because that's a lot,
Just feels like a contrived question.
Contrived. How?
Yeah. I know it's a question you ask everybody. You know what I mean? You've got this list of I'm not about the improving the quality of my life. I'm about truth. I was always about truth.
So then that would
So even if that truth led to the destruction and my death, I was about truth. I was pursuing truth.
Emotional death?
No, even if it's physical death.
Okay.
I've always been in the pursuit of truth. What is the truth of my existence? What is the truth of life? So that was the core pursuit that was underneath all of this stuff. So healing, I was in the pursuit of truth. Going to war, going to these places, I was in the pursuit of truth. So even here.
Of who you are and what you want.
Of who I am, but who the world. What is this world? What is this universe? What is the truth of reality? So what have I done to better my life or to, let's say...
You mentioned that you saw death as a spiritual death. You didn't have... Everything was dark. The world sucks. Everything sucks. Everything holds no purpose. But I've also heard you mention Cambodia building wells for people. I see you on a personal level. You're more than willing to help people who need help.
Totally.
So on a level, I feel like it's not all hopeless. There's got to be something that you see that's valuable, purposeful, maybe?
Totally, yeah. Because when I'm talking about that, I'm speaking about the past.
Okay.
Now do I still have that There's so much that we could fucking talk about, but like,
Right.
do I still have that perspective? Yes, but I carry both perspectives equally.
Okay.
That humans are complete shit,
Yep.
and that humans are completely awesome.
Yep.
But the reality is, the other part of that is I no longer care about the outside world. I'm complete shit, and I'm completely awesome. Completely awesome. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to live my life as a completely awake, aware, open, vibrant person. But tomorrow I could kill myself, and I'm okay with that. Does that even make sense?
Nope.
I didn't think so.
Bridge the gap. Yep.
I can't bridge the gap because
So
I'm alive.
Yep.
I'm so alive.
But tomorrow you'd be like, I'm done.
Yes.
And if that's the case, that's the truth, and that's what you want to do.
And it's an existential choice as well. Yeah. It's not just, oh, I'm depressed. Like, a lot of my stuff doesn't come from like, oh, I'm depressed. My life is not cool. My life is awesome.
See, mine used to be that way. Mine used to be very like, I'd wake up and be like, oh, because I was so tired of waking up. Yeah. I was like, this is shit, world shit, life shit. And then like once I started doing the work and like seeing what is, I'm like, my life's fucking amazing.
Look at us. We're in Ukraine right now.
I know.
Some people might think, oh, that sucks. I feel for you guys or whatever. And it's like, or you guys are crazy.
I got a lot of that before we came.
Since we've been here, we've had nothing. But
what led you here?
Paycheck.
Okay.
Honestly, at the end of the day, paycheck.
Yeah.
But it's not just a paycheck. It's a great paycheck. Doing something that's more interesting, more challenging, more rewarding. And it just made sense. Like I've got, we work domestically. There's plenty of work for us domestically. The money's fantastic domestically. However, it's empty. It's vapid. It's pointless.
Purposeful.
It's purposeless. It has no meaning. We're working with, and I've said this before, we're working with individuals who are not at our level. We're working with people who are not our peers. And what I mean by that is, our industry has become civilianized. And again, this could be divisive, but I don't care because it's the truth. Our industry has become divisive, or has become civilianized. And we're no longer working with like-minded individuals, which also takes at least for me, the experience. It takes away from the experience. It's like, I can't just sit down and have this discussion with you or even some of the dark humor that we share. Yeah. Whereas like the civilians are completely turned off by us most of the time, where they can't relate. We can't relate. They want to talk about, to me, things that I think are just ridiculously fucking mundane or ridiculously boring or ridiculously whatever. It's just, don't get me wrong. I've met some of these civilians that have been fantastic.
Yeah. Amazing people. Yeah.
Fucking cool people. Great people. But overall, like generally speaking, they're in a different arena. I'm in a different arena. We're in a different arena. Here we're working with like-minded professionals. That
I do really enjoy that.
Right. Yeah. It's big boy.
Let me clarify. I enjoy working. I enjoy working in an environment where someone's not like breathing down my neck. Yeah. It's either I do the job or I'm not going to be here tomorrow. Right.
Exactly.
So I do enjoy that.
Yep. And like coming up here tonight, I was like, I've got a million things to do. I've got shit to focus on that is Ukraine oriented.
And it's not that I have to. I want to. Yeah. I want to focus on it. I want to do work. Exactly. And it's because like I don't want to be the weak link, know? No. Which I haven't had that motivation ever. Like most of the time it's like I give like 5 to 6% of my brain power and it's like exceptional, with like the historical work. And it's just like this, it's like, oh.
We've talked about this. It's like we can go do the domestic work with our hands tied behind our backs.
Yeah, with all the PTSD.
Blindfolded. And with all, like I actually ran a project years ago that I was actually in full manic episode. I would get up, go to work in the morning. I would run this project, and then I would go home and literally go through my full-on manic episodes. And I had an ex-girlfriend that I was communicating with at the time, and literally I'd get into the house and scream and go crazy. I wasn't eating, and I was able to contain it all through the workday. Get home and just go crazy. And like I was planning my suicide. I was going up into the mountains. I had found a ditch. I had gone through this whole process. I was going to buy a shotgun. I did not go to that project with a gun. I usually travel with a firearm to wherever I'm going. for protection when I'm out hiking, blah, blah, blah. I sleep with a gun sometimes. But on this particular project, which was just in Oregon and I live in Idaho, I did not bring a firearm. And I look at things like that as indicative of what is supposed to happen. Because if I had a firearm with me, I probably would have killed myself at that time. Mm. However, I was going to the store one day to buy a shotgun because I couldn't buy a handgun in that state because I'm not from that state. So, laws and et cetera, but I could buy a shotgun. I could buy a long arm. So I was literally, I said, I'm going to buy a shotgun now and blah, blah, blah. And I drove past the gun shop, went up to the mountains, found where I wanted to die. And I was already planning this suicide. I was going to shoot myself on this berm. Body would roll into the hole. I was going to have it, set up with an ignition source and coals and wood, and it would then cremate my body essentially, and I was just like, and, for someone else to hear that, they're like, what the fuck? And it's like, no, well, it's like, I end my life, but I also take care of my body if there's nothing to clean up.
Right.
And after I finished that project, I drove back to Idaho, flew to Pennsylvania, and went into the hospital. And it was probably one of the worst manic episodes that I've ever had, because I ended up in a state of catatonia, which is pretty severe. I was literally just in a drooling mess for 5 days, and then finally kind of came out of that. However, while I was in that state of just of drooling, not being able to speak, I was literally inaudible. Mm-hmm. I could just make noises. And I remember this because I was aware, because I had this spiritual awakening in Iraq, which we didn't even talk about, which was a profound Kundalini type, full on blowout, energetic, boom, awakening to the non-dual reality of consciousness and the elusive nature of reality, which then led to, these processes to happen over the next 15, 16 years. And of course, to that suicidal moment and then the breakdown. So here I am experiencing this stuff, which could be considered insane, yet I'm completely aware, cognizant that I am going through this, and I'm communicating these things to these psychiatrists after I break out of the catatonic state. So here I am, unable to communicate, but completely aware, consciously. And after I come out of it, I was like, oh yeah, I was going through this, and I couldn't communicate to you, and blah, blah, blah. I said, but the whole theme to my being in that VA hospital program at the time was taking my power back. Mm-hmm. I went back to the VA, the initial VA in Pennsylvania, that had treated me after Somalia 20 years prior. And essentially I was just I filleted every doctor that I had seen 20 years, 25 years prior, and was just like, you did this, you did this, you did this, and expressed all of my anger, distaste, rage. They brought the police in because they didn't know how to process what I was conveying to them. And I was conveying my desire to hurt people, conveying my desire to bring physical harm to them. And at the same time, they're like, oh, you're fucking crazy. And I'm like, oh shit. That was another wake up moment for me where I was like, oh fuck, we live in a different world. We live in a different reality. These guys think that I actually
want to hurt them. You're like, no, what you did made me want to.
Right.
Not that I'd literally do it, though. Yeah.
Right. But to see the dissonance, cognitive dissonance, their interpretation versus here I am, I'm in pajamas in a locked fucking unit saying, look, you did this to me. I remember it. I hold you responsible. You've taken your power from me. I've allowed you to take your power from me. I'm taking my power back. I think you're incompetent. You shouldn't even be a doctor. You shouldn't be in the VA system. You're hurting people. You're harming people. And I'm not going to allow you to harm me. I'm not going to allow you to hurt me. So essentially the awakening process made me whole again through breaking me, making me aware of how broken I was, having to take on the responsibility of healing myself, breaking through coping mechanisms, using acupuncture, using meditation, using craniosacral therapy, using energetic therapy, using fucking shamanism, using mushrooms, using all of these things to help me become whole again, to heal my nervous system, to heal my spiritual system, to heal my psychological system, to heal all of these systems to become who I am now.
Right.
And here I am in Ukraine functioning as a whole human being. Now I understand, I still have my personality. My personality can be challenging for a lot of people because there's that intensity or whatever, or there's that whatever, just the everyday personality.
So now that you're more self-aware, Ukraine comes on the board and you see it coming.
Yep.
And it's a real possibility. Like, are you noticing anything going on? Any triggers? Any heightened elevation?
Totally.
Like, okay,
Totes my goats.
what were you getting?
So you and I were...
Because I wanted to do this while it's fresh.
Totally. You and I are working together in Hawaii, living together, off and on, blah, blah, blah. Because
we weren't working together. I got fired.
Right. Well, I hate to rub that in, Joe.
We work with civilians.
Right.
Yeah.
You got fired by a civilian.
My communication was poor.
You got fired. Let's just get this out. You got fired by a civilian.
Because he was so much better than me.
Oh! Anyway, I'm still working for this civilian, and I'm living in your house, and I'm just running up your electricity bill and doing all these things.
Those listening were sarcastic.
Right. There's a lot of sarcasm here.
But it was really fired.
Right. It was. You were a shit count. I stayed on, and I worked with your friend. Who's also still there working because he's awesome. Anyway, you go back to the mainland. You're doing some contract work there. Ukraine comes up. You and I have been discussing Ukraine for a while. There were different opportunities to go to Ukraine with different entities. None of them panned out, right?
Yeah, some I was uncomfortable with. Like, I remember when they popped up, it was like, shoo, that is stupid money. But I don't want to hurt people anymore.
Yes.
I don't want to be involved with hurting people anymore. So I was like, man, it's a lot of money. But I knew that the emotional strain would be really hard to heal again.
Totes.
Yeah.
And I'm in the same boat because that opportunity that was kind of like there, lingering around us, kind of floating around us, the money was stupid. Stupid.
Yeah.
Right?
Like annual salary monthly.
Right.
Was stupid.
But it was so stupid, and there was a reason for that stupidity.
Yes.
Because it involved us doing things that were questionable.
To put it politely.
Morally, ethically, right?
Yeah.
and I had issues with that.
Yeah.
And yes, I saw the dollars, and I'm still motivated by money. Money's awesome. There's nothing wrong with money.
In gold.
Right.
Yeah. I would love financial independence, so I don't have to do this at all. Like, I enjoyed it. Well, we'll get to that, but I'd rather do other adventures.
Yeah. Like, I'd rather, do I want
to talk to people about mental health stuff. That's literally all I want to do.
Exactly. Like, do I want to be here, or do I want to be doing something else? Not to say that this is bad. This is awesome for my situation. However, that money would have been money to create a new life that was defined by freedom, financial freedom, spiritual freedom, existential freedom. That was freedom. However, it required me to do things that was in conflict with everything that I had become and everything that I am.
Same. Morally disagreed with it.
Yes. So then this opportunity arises, and I pursued it actively. I was like, that's what I want to be in Ukraine. I knew I wanted to be in Ukraine. It was clear that I wanted to and needed to be here. At the same time, it was also clear that I didn't need to be here, didn't want to be here. So it was both. But it panned out that I'm here. I pursued it. We had connections. We got in. Here we are.
What were some of the negatives that popped up?
Okay, so initially, there was a lot of, I would say there were latent issues that were still kind of dormant within the nervous system that came up for me. It wasn't like really psychological. It was more physiological and stuff that was just kind of ruminating in the nervous system. I was anxious. I wasn't sleeping.
I didn't sleep for days sometimes. Like, it felt weird because I only have PTSD, never bipolar or anything, but I felt very extremes. Like, my PTSD manifests itself like extreme emotions. So I was definitely triggered. I felt extreme uncomfortable and anxiety, as well as really excited. Right. Like, I was like, oh, that's definitely what I wanted to do, because
like the same excited you get when you see me.
Definitely. Definitely. But it was just so weird, because I feel like the media that we get, I thought this was going to be fucking chaos over here. I thought it was just going to be like curfew to the extent like there's stores open like an hour or two here. There's no power, cold showers. I was like, I hate cold showers. Like in my head, worst case scenario was terrifying, and then you get this list of like, hey, pack this. And it's like, go bag. And I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
All right. I can hike. Like I brought stuff like I can hike all the way out of this country if I needed to. But yeah. So that's where I was going through the ebbs and flows of like the positive and negative. But did you have similar?
Let me ask you this. Have you been in a war zone that was depicted accurately by the media?
Never.
Right.
Never. No. Right. I remember my mom, she was upset in Iraq. She was like, oh, there's a V-bit. It killed people, like lots of people. And there's this and that died. And I was like, I worked it. No one died.
Yeah.
I was like, he killed himself. Like that was it because he, I guess, blew it too early. Somebody blew it for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, no one died. And it was like, that was my first experience of, oh, it's not all real kind of thing, And then that's what really helped me in this. I was like, because things that I was reading and seeing was so conflicting, it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I was like, if that's what's happening, then maybe it's not as accurate as depicted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just it. And this is, I think.
But I'm still going to prep like it's worst case.
Totally. Because we know that shit can hit the fan.
Yeah.
So you want to be prepared for that. Mm-hmm. But like, I often used to joke, like I got my bachelor's in Somalia, I got my master's in Bosnia, and I got my PhD in Iraq. Right? So now I'm just here out in the field, Now I'm working with my degrees, out in the field. And that's just kind of like a way that I compare myself against a civilian counterpart, who may have chosen the route of education and being a scholar. So, I have my PhD as well, I got it, and I got my PhD in Baghdad or Fallujah,
right.
The University of Fallujah, 2004, right? But yeah, I did. I had issues arise, and I think I was still, there was so much anxiety not knowing if I was actually in. So there was that was building. It was like, am I in? Am I not in? Am I going to get in? Am I going to get in on the ground floor of this? And of course, in our industry too, you don't know anything until the last minute. And it's like, okay, you're in. And it's like, fuck, man. Like, why couldn't you just have said that like weeks ago?
Yeah.
Right? Like, why do you have to? And then it's like, well, you're going tomorrow. It's like, fuck, man.
Yeah.
Why could you not have said that weeks ago? Why does it always have to be this way?
Yeah.
And of course, like all of this preparation anxiety. Am I going to be prepared enough? Again, very little communication coming over here. So my nervous system is definitely jazzed.
Yeah.
I want to be prepared, based on my experiences in the past. I always pack heavy. I'm not a light packer. I'm going to be prepared for every scenario, every situation. It sucks to travel heavy, but once you arrive, it's a wet dream. It's like, oh, I've got croissants.
I have layers.
I've got this and I've got this and I've got this. And like, oh, you make fun of my layers? I've got layers. You're going to fucking freeze to death, motherfucker. But, aside from that, there were a lot of things that I had to process, but I had to process them so quickly because I think I told you a few weeks in, I realized because I pursued once I left Hawaii and got to the mainland and, got home to actually prepare for this because we were green lighted. I went to a craniosacral therapist and I had some craniosacral therapy done on me to kind of just help with some other issues that I've been having. And then realized, only a week prior to that, as I'm preparing to come to a new war zone, that there was another level of trauma that I had never truly become cognizant of. And so suddenly, a few weeks before I'm deploying to a new war zone that I have no knowledge about and that there's very little communication about and what to expect, what not to expect, because everybody's just kind of tight-lipped about it. And it's just you and I bouncing ideas off of each other. Well, do you know anybody? Not really. And, we're trying to extract as much information from people. Like, what do I bring? What do I not bring? What's the situation? Where are we going? What will I be doing? What will he be doing? What do I need for this, and this? And then you get that, like you just said, well, you need this go bag. And it's like, fuck, dude, like, what are we going into? What are we getting ourselves into? And of course, I'm feeling, not a lot of the old, let's say, addictive emotive experiences.
None of that.
I do not feel any of that. Like I'm going in and, to get another fix.
It wasn't like that at all.
Nope.
It was more of a deeper connection. Like there's something over there that I feel drawn to. And on another level, like all my negatives weren't just emotional.
Right.
Like I've never, ever had, I've heard you talk about it, and I've heard other people talk about it, like feeling it in your body, feeling some sort of energy in your body or whatever.
Yeah, I'm definitely body oriented when it comes to that. When it comes to like,
I'm not at all. Like
I can tell
when I get fired up, like I feel it, like I feel like a burning sensation in my stomach.
That's
like about it.
Yeah.
But before I came here, I have like this spot on my back, and it feels like a rash that's burning and itchy. It's like, I don't know, it's my left shoulder blade. And there's nothing there. I've been to a doctor and they're like, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
But the only other time that I ever felt it was when I was in a really toxic relationship, when it was at its worst.
Right.
I hadn't ever addressed any of my PTSD issues. I wasn't doing anything positive, and it was just, I was maxed. Mm-hmm. That's the only other time I've ever felt it in my life. And I didn't even realize it was gone, honestly, until it came back the couple of weeks before I came here, because I realized that I was maxed. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
So then that's when I started doing meditation, working out, and like de-escalating the situation and getting back to normal. But yeah.
Well, that's just it. It's like, let's say our training and our conditioning is in our body.
Yeah.
Our body's a sponge. Yeah. Our body retains everything. Like you fell when you were 2 years old, that's still in your body. Mm. But you've learned to function around it. It was a bump. It was a bruise. Your body absorbed it, but your body also learned to compensate for it. Mm. Then you fell again, and you continued to fall, and your body just adapted, and you evolved. But then let's say, and I'm just going to speak from my experience. Then maybe at 3 years old, I was beat up. My body absorbed that. My mind absorbed that, and it never was able to release that. So it retains it. The next day I get beat. It retains that. Then I fall on my bicycle, and it's a trauma. I remember riding my bicycle. I closed my eyes one day and I was like, I'm going to ride, and I fucking hit a car. I'm not a smart dude.
I remember I was riding down the street in front of my house, and I had my feet on the handlebars, which was cool until my mom got home, was driving up the hill, and I freaked out and hit a mailbox.
Right. And I remember hitting this car and just getting fucked up.
It was like, explains so much.
Right.
I stunted your growth.
Well, yeah. I was the same height then as I am now.
Right? Done. So this happened at 12.
I no longer ride my bike with my eyes closed. I learned that lesson.
Smart.
Right?
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is we continue to retain, and then you go to war.
Yeah.
There's an explosion, 100 meters away or whatever, 200 feet away, blah, blah, blah. Well, your body absorbs that shock, and I was going to talk about that in Iraq, where I was riding the wave, we go out and we put ourselves near an explosive shot, and just to feel the concussion. Well, then that has a cumulative effect on the body, etc. So all of these things that we experience have cumulative effects on our cellular structure. And so it's retained by the body. We develop these patterns. I think we were talking to Jim, the sniper killer, and he was talking about how his body's all contorted and blah, blah, blah. He was crushed by this piece of equipment when he was a kid. And then he went into the military and he's got all these issues. And it's like, well, our bodies then, they overcompensated and adapt. Mm. They take on physical trauma. They take on emotional trauma. They take on psychological trauma. They take on spiritual trauma. And then some of that trauma is also passed down generation to generation, So it's almost nonstop. And once you become awake and aware of all this stuff, you're like, holy fuck. I have so much shit to process. Mm-hmm. I have so much shit to heal. And that's exactly what I went through this process that took me almost 2 decades of healing spiritual trauma, psychological trauma, emotional trauma, et cetera, and also hereditary trauma. Mm-hmm. The trauma that's handed down, through your karma. Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, whoa, shit just got weird again, right? So we're carrying this. And of course, why are we here? Well, our karma led us here. You want to call it karma, you can call it whatever you want to call it. But again, there's this feeling, there's this sensation. Where do we feel it? In our bodies. You just said you felt something in your shoulder from when you were well, I've only felt it when I was in a relationship. I've only felt it at this time. Well, there's obviously something bound there.
It was like for years, right? Consistent every day, all day. And then I didn't feel it again until right before I came here. Mm-hmm. And when I got here, I guess we'll talk to that eventually. It's like when I got here and I was like, this is it.
Right.
Gone.
Yeah.
You know, because it wasn't that worst case scenario. It's amazing.
Oh, it's amazing. Like, okay, let's talk about our meals. You and I are going on dates every day, right? So we're here to perform a certain mission. We're getting that, you know, we're task oriented. We're performing that. But at the same time,
and then it means we go for walks and
we walk, we talk, we eat.
People.
Our meals are insanely fucking
so good.
Insanely insane.
I'm not suggesting there's not a war here. Right. There is 100% a war here, but it is over that way.
Yep.
You know, and there was an air raid. The first air raid, sick to my stomach immediately. It reminded me of when I get hit by an IED.
Yeah.
Immediately went there.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not this.
Yeah.
De-escalated the situation. And then after that, just grabbed my stuff, went down, waited. After that, still, I think we've had 4 now. Since I've been here, nothing's hit here, you know, but.
And we've talked about that, like, where am I at in my process? And I gauge that from my psychological reaction, my emotional reaction, my physical and physiological reaction, my spiritual reaction. So there's all these different layers and levels. And the first air raid that we had, I was with the group. I had to follow the group. I had to follow the rules, you know, so we went down and, you know, that was the longest one that we had. I think we're down there 2.5 hours in this bunker, which was essentially just a garage that had a little area set up for that. Like it was there a long time ago. It wasn't built just specifically for this war, you know, so we were down there. They had Wi-Fi, you know, Wi-Fi connectivity. So
coffee.
You know, there was no, not in this one because it was just in a garage, but like other guys went to an air raid shelter in a hotel, the Radisson, you know, so they had access to different, you know, amenities. This one was just, it was the nearest one. So we went to it, but there was an air raid the other day and, you know, and everybody's checking in and I'm like, I'm eating chicken wings. I'm comfortable where I'm at, you know, and of course, jokingly going through the probability, like we've talked about, like, well, this building isn't necessarily a target, you know, and then of course they're firing missiles. They're not firing artillery. The missiles are probably directed at a certain target. Of course, they can go off course. They have a 60% dud rate. I'm going through the probabilities of my, you know, jokingly going through the probabilities, like, oh, the probability of me actually getting struck by a missile or being in the radius, the blast radius or the frag radius is extremely low, you know, but then I'm like,
as you take a sip of your lemonade.
Right. They didn't have lemonade. So I was just drinking water, no gas, but eating chicken wings and having Belgian pea soup. Yeah. And I was like, I'm not fucking going to a bunker. You know, like nobody's here to account for me. I'm here to account for me. I am a self-responsible, mature human being. I'm not going to react in that way. And we've talked about the fact, like, I'd rather be on the surface and deal with the threat than be buried
underneath all the rubble with a bunch of people.
That's more horrific.
That sounds horrible way to go.
Right. You know, and if that's the reality and that's the case. I would hate to have to
eat one of them.
No. Right. You get down there and it's like Donner Pass, you know, and I'm just like, you're nibbling on me, I'm nibbling on you, or we just decide to like nibble on Dan. You know, so hey, Dan, guess what? You're the youngest.
You know what IT says? You're it.
Right. You're the IT guy. You're the weakest here. You're the weakest link.
And you're the youngest. You know, like when you get the young meat, it's still fresh.
You add no value to our survival situation here.
Just kidding. I never.
Unless you can establish comms and get us out of here.
Right? You have an hour.
So pucker up, Buttercup. I pull out my knife. I pull out my spoon, and we go to town. But you know, and I feel like when I'm out on my own, I'm going to make the best judgment call that suits me,
right?
That I'm comfortable with. And I'm not uncomfortable with an air raid. I'm not uncomfortable with these things. However,
that could change quickly.
That will change quickly. So if something were to strike here, how would I react then? How would I respond to that? You know, so
it depends.
Again, it's situational.
Yeah.
You know, but since I've been here, I think there's probably been maybe 4, 5, 6 air raids because I was here a few days prior to you, and I think prior to you getting here, I might have been involved in 2. So there was a protocol that we followed because we were in the group, and there's a protocol that we followed because there are certain
it's a corporate organization,
there are certain
regulations
rules.
That are
and that's okay. You know, because whatever, in that world, that's the reality. In my world, I'm living in a very different reality. And I am comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with accepting the consequences of my choices because I'm choosing that. And that's what being a free human being is to me. I understand the consequences of my choices. In the past, when I was young and unconscious, I did not. That's when you become a victim, right? You can become a victim like, okay, the army did this to me. Society did this to me. My parents did this to me. And it's true, they did. Yeah. However, when you,
or this is all because of PTSD. This is why I'm the way I am.
Right.
I can't ever be better. I won't be better.
Or a combination of all of it.
All of it.
You know what I mean? So that's just it. It's like, well, when you mature, when you, let's say, awake and become conscious and you become a mature human being, it's like, okay, I'm responsible for all that. Yeah. I am. Yes, I was abused. Yes, I did go into the military. Yes, these traumas did happen. However, I have to take ownership of that. Because if I just spend my life saying, you did this to me, I'm a victim, you're never going to heal. Like, of course you have to, like, I had to go through the process of saying, yeah, okay, I was victimized. I am a victim.
It's humbling.
Yeah.
All of it.
This did happen to me. All right.
Acceptance.
Right. Yeah. Acceptance. Right. Okay. Like, okay. Now, so staying in that victim mentality, that victim mindset is, it's creating just an embittered sense of self. Mm-hmm. And so how do I move on from that? And it's like, okay, so what the acceptance is really what it was. It was all about the acceptance. Once I accepted it, it's like, okay, yeah, I am a victim. Because I denied being a victim for a long time. I was one of those, stay strong,
Oh yeah.
Stay 100%. Strong. You're weak,
yeah.
blah, blah,
I was
blah.
like, no, I knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
I knew something was wrong for years. And then it wasn't until I was going to marriage counseling. She was like, hey, I'd like to see just you.
Yeah.
And I was like, why? She was like, we want to talk about your PTSD. And I was like, I don't have PTSD. She's like,
oh, yeah. Josh, the interview you did with Josh?
Yeah.
I don't know if you talked about it because I didn't listen to it. Because I don't listen to your fucking radio show.
I love how old you are. Radio, yeah.
Right? I don't know.
Yeah, my AM radio. I don't know how to get your podcast on this radio.
So Josh is a good friend of mine. Yeah. I love that motherfucker, right?
Yeah.
So he shows up on a project I'm working on. It's like over a decade ago. And it's fantastic. He shows up, we get talking. I'm like, I don't know, probably asked him like, oh, so where were you? Like, were you in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines? He was like, I was Army. He's like, deploy? He's like, yeah, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you have PTSD? And he's like, no, not me. Mm-hmm. And I fucking laughed in his face and walked away. And then he began to unravel. Like, literally, that conversation was enough to trigger, rip him open, open him up. A few weeks later, it's like, I don't know if I gave him mushrooms or not. I get a call, 2 a.m. He's naked. He's in the backyard at like north of Seattle. And he's like, dude. He's like, I can't remember. I think he's in the backyard with a gun naked in like a Seattle fucking urban setting. He's like, I think I took too much. And I'm like talking him down off the wall. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, it's okay. It's not real. Right? I'm like, it's not real. It's just bringing up these things, blah, blah, blah. Right.
Put down.
Right. And I said, it's going to be wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I talked to a lady from MAPS and she was like, sometimes if you do get high on MDMA, psilocybin, any of that, she's like, it can be re-traumatizing.
Yes.
If you're not ready for it.
Yes.
Which is a real thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's like opening that door,
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that re-traumatization up. Like through, like, let's say those methods. A therapist can re-traumatize you. I've been to many therapists, many like
VA.
The VA. The VA reinforces trauma and trauma response and traumatic reactions and anger and rage and all of those and depression and hatred, but, I've been on the table because I pursue a lot of like, let's say, non-conventional methods to heal the body, to heal the trauma in the body and to remove the story or the impact of that trauma in the body. And so I've met with many like healer types, especially when I was in the Santa Fe, like spiritual healer community. There's a lot of fucking woo-woos, a lot of weirdos. And I'm one too. It's just that I've had these military experiences. I speak a certain way. I carry myself a certain way. I am so energetically sensitive. Like you felt my hands.
I'm not touching your weird, moist, soft hands.
No, touch them.
No,
but we've talked about that.
Yeah. Get your weird hands away from me.
Anyway, like I'm made to be like one of those woo-woos. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just choose not to be.
Yeah.
But I've sat or I've laid on the table of many of those people who are so wrapped up in their own ego that they've re-traumatized me. That they've gone in too deep, too fast, too hard because they thought they could heal me. I see you grinning.
Yeah. Because you said they went too deep.
I went too hard, too fast.
Yeah.
why don't you grow the fuck up? You know, like, I think they've had this discussion, like, what separates EOD from SF? What separates EOD from
We're
Rangers?
like children.
We are.
Yeah,
it's like they're all serious. You know.
Yeah, we're like, we can be. But
Yeah,
why?
yeah, so they're always like shooting up a bunch of kids outside of Syria. It's like, and we're making mom jokes. You know what I mean? Like, we're doing the most. Like, we're like stupid, immature frat kids. You know what I mean? And I think that's what I love about our culture and our kind of like experience. Like EOD was it. It was like, cause I tried to do that SF thing and I was like, you guys you're too serious. Yeah, you're too gay. You know? But,
pants are so tight.
Right. And it's like, I'm going to go over here with these dudes are fucking wild, man. You know what I mean? Like, I can go be me with these guys.
Judgment free.
Right. Because everybody's really... And it fit. It just fit for me. It doesn't fit for everybody because there's a lot of guys that don't make it. There's a lot of guys that don't fit. And then you meet a lot of EOD guys like, well, I didn't really fit in.
And you're like, we can tell.
Don't. But then I was talking about this with the guys the other day. There's psychological profiles of EOD. And one of the key ID features of an EOD tech is someone who does not fit into the standard military structure, whether it's Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine. You know, so the Navy guy or the Army guy or the Air Force guy or whomever does not fit into the standard military structure, and so they gravitate towards EOD. And I mean, some get out. You know what I mean? There are people who don't, you know, whatever. But like, I see that. Like, I was conventional. I was a ground pounder, combat engineer. Boom. It was cool. I mean, I'm definitely more. I saw like the pros and cons of that. You know, and I'm glad I had that experience prior to coming into EOD. Like Josh's experience is very unique to him. Like, he did the SF path, blah, 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 boom. Then into EOD and then into Delta, you know. So he has a very unique experience. Never did conventional military, so he doesn't know what that experience is like.
I never
conventional
did
big army, you know. Like, non-EOD army sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah.
It's a shitty day every day, you know. But then when you get into EOD, it's like, whoa. But now it's different, you know, because it's a completely different military and it's a completely different MOS. But anyway, blah, blah, blah. I really get into like the psychology behind what attracts an individual to certain job sets, MOSs, and what, you know, like the EOD tech. You know, like, I've made a lot of ups, like, I think we're very sensitive.
But we try not to be.
But yeah.
We try to pretend we're not.
You and I are fucking cupcakes. We are cupcakes. We're always hugging.
I love flowers.
Right.
You know?
We hold hands everywhere.
That's not true, you weird little non-calloused hand. Like,
in Hawaii, we shared dinners under candlelight.
We did. We did in Ukraine too, because there was a blackout.
We're not even talking about fucking healing anymore.
Yeah, we're definitely detouring. Let's circle back, wrap up Ukraine.
What are your You're thoughts supposed to help me stay focused.
I think it's a hilarious conversation, so I'm sorry, I was enjoying it.
All right.
But
focus.
Yeah, Ukraine. We're here.
We're here.
What are your thoughts, feelings? Like, what you expected?
I processed a lot, but no,
because I didn't chase money. That's not why I'm here. Yeah. We can say more stateside,
of course.
So I came here because it was challenging.
Yes,
it made me uncomfortable, and I don't mean like fearful.
Yeah,
it wasn't the adrenaline. There was no adrenaline in that sense. It was like, I mean, there's moments of fear.
Yeah,
because I read like all the propaganda. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, this is going to be insane.
Jesus.
But then I'd read the other side of the house and be like, okay, you know, it has to be somewhere close in the middle I'm fine with.
Yeah.
But it was uncomfortable because I was going to be really challenged and step out of my comfort zone in a work environment.
Yeah.
As well as I saw it as being helpful in a way of like actually, I don't know, bringing some sort of, I don't know, removing a hazard. You know, making a situation better for somebody else, you know? So I was like, yeah. So I think in that sense, it's exactly that.
Yeah.
It is. I'm challenged in a really healthy way for work, which I love. And it's not as crazy as I thought it was going to be. I love it here, man.
Can I shit all over that parade?
Fuck, shit all over it.
Thanks, man.
Hit it with a bow door.
All right.
Go.
So getting back to the money aspect, I hit a dead end domestically. I was like, okay, like civilian, domestic UXO work. I was like, I'm just like, this is fucking dead to me.
Effort.
The effort to reward is fantastic, because it's very little effort, very good reward.
Yeah.
However, it was just, again, the vapidness, the emptiness, the lack of purpose, the lack of meaning, the lack of interest in working with non-peers. So even like I couldn't sit down with somebody like one of those guys and have this conversation. No. Right? Like they haven't been where we've been.
Did you have this conversation with many people, you feel like?
Yeah. Josh and I, like there are a lot of people in my life that I have this
in your life. But I mean, as a general, like, people that we work with. How many people?
Okay. I do appreciate this about our industry too. Even on the civilian side, like the civilians who are attracted to what we do too are also unique in their own way.
They are.
But like I would say, EOD techs in general, you can, whether they agree with you or not, they are some of the most openly willing people to have these types of conversations. Over the years,
because they're not afraid of anything. Really.
I've been amazed. Right. They're not afraid. They're not afraid to challenge themselves, and they're not afraid to have, like, over the years, I've always been impressed by the fact that we can be out there, like doing what we do on the civilian side and the domestic side of the house, doing a range clearance out in miserable conditions, but be with like-minded individuals, having discussions about PTSD, having discussions about, the fact that, like, the deeper, more intimate discussions, because you've talked about this
real conversations.
Yeah, real conversation. We talk about real things.
Yeah,
and we're not afraid to offend each other. We're not afraid to hurt each other. We're not afraid
to be ourselves.
We're not afraid to punch each other.
No, right. I fought. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we've seen each other naked. We've seen each other cry. We've seen each other vomit. We've seen each other die.
We're talking about all EOD guys, not me and John.
Right. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've been in these situations where, and they're unique to us, but it's like, at the same time, it's like, you can sit down. We can have, like, I've told people about these spiritual, I've told people about the bipolar. Yeah, I've been judged, even within our own community. But at the same time, they're willing to listen. But a lot of times they're like, oh yeah, I've had that.
Yeah.
Or my mom was bipolar, or my dad was bipolar, or I have PTSD. Or you get the guys like, I don't have PTSD.
Yeah.
I'm solid.
I don't believe in that.
Yeah, you're weak.
Yeah.
You're a weak motherfucker.
Freaking pussy.
You're a pussy.
Yeah.
I was.
Then you see the train wreck that they leave in.
You're a fucking mess. You know what I mean?
Like, circle back here when you feel like
I'm a mess because I live it now. I live it openly. You're a mess because you're in denial. You're a mess because you're hiding it. You're a mess because you're suppressing it. When's the last time you beat your wife this morning? Right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Ego. Yep. Like, you still have the ego, and you're still carrying it around like pretending to be something makes you that something. No. It doesn't.
Yeah. But I do. I've always respected but we've lost that because now it's more civilianized. Can you have these? I've had some really powerful discussions with civilians as well. However, it's just not the same. We might talk about spiritual awakening.
I feel like I have to be soft.
Yes.
And sensitive, mindful.
But we are.
Which is fine. Sensitive. We can be. Yeah. But I really enjoy being very free.
Yeah.
And know if I misspeak, then it's okay. It's going to hit a wall instead of a glass window.
But getting back to shitting on your parade.
Yeah, shit on it.
Because you were saying, in relationship to me, I mentioned the money. I'm here for the money.
Yeah. I do have financial goals here too. I mean, it'd be silly not to.
That's
what drives us.
It's a collected picture. It's like the money is fantastic. The money's similar to what I can make stateside, right?
Yeah, 100%.
You can make stateside.
Yeah.
And in fact, we could probably sometimes make more stateside.
Yeah, easy.
So it's not necessarily all about the money. It's the money, the purpose, the meaning. But also, I hit a dead end there. I was like, I'm spinning my wheels. I'm not happy. I want to do something. I want to change my life. I wanted to move in a new direction. Mm-hmm. Now, someone might say, well, you're going back to war. That's the same old direction. That's the same thing you keep doing. You're fucking crazy. You're not healthy. You're not healing. And it's au contraire, mon frère. It's not that at all. I am not the same person I was 20 years ago. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. I'm not the same person I was a year ago.
There's things about this that I was afraid of, that it would re-trigger some things. And, like the IDF coming in, I definitely felt, that was something. But being able, what I was really excited about was being able to process that so quickly and like de-escalate it. And like that proved to me that in my mind, if they were to teach us, or if I was able to accept the fact that PTSD was a thing when I was in and learn those things back then, it wouldn't have made me unfit for duty.
Yeah.
Like if I would have been able to process and deal with it and learn how to deal with it in a healthy way, I would have been more functional.
Yeah.
I would have been clearer headed. I would have been better at it, you know? So I'm like, interesting.
And like what you were just saying, like with the, let's say the purpose of the meeting, doing something positive in regards to war.
Yeah, positive for me, something that I value. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like because I've already had the bubble bursted for me, like working in Cambodia and seeing that humanitarian work is bullshit too.
Oh yeah, it's all hypocritical.
Fucking hypocritical, corrupt.
Yeah.
And like what we're doing, you know, like they're probably going to spend the next 30 years here milking the international fucking community of money, taking their time, slowly going through these processes of mine removal, you know, and then of course there's governmental corruption on our side and their side, you know, and I saw the same thing in Cambodia. Cambodia, they started cleaning mines in the 90s. So it's now 30 plus years. And I was part of the processes there. I was involved with governmental institutions.
At the States. The States are the same way. How long have they been cleaning Hawaii?
Yeah.
Billions of dollars they dump into Hawaii.
Inefficiency, ineptness.
Low quality standards, no oversight,
Well, there's no purpose behind it either. It's like, well, they realize that all of this generates revenue.
Yeah.
So if let's say if we come in here and clean it in 10 years, that means Ukraine or whatever country you're in. It doesn't matter if you're in Ukraine or Cambodia
or Hawaii,
the United States. It doesn't
Arizona,
matter because it's a revenue generator. And if you clean it efficiently and quickly, you're no longer generating revenue. And so NGOs get involved in these revenue generating games. It's like they go into Africa, they go into these places to do good, and they become economic institutions that create inefficiencies and also enable institutions and enable local populaces to continue extracting and being and behaving in a corrupt manner. Like, so like when it comes to being here, I don't have that like idealistic illusion like I'm gonna fucking go there and help people. It's like I already know what the game is. Yeah. But it's a better game than where I was. It's a cooler game. It's more
the
interesting
exact same thing, but different work environment, healthier, I feel like.
Healthier.
It's challenging for me because it's a new kind of...
We can use our skill set. Yeah. More so here than there.
I switched my brain back on, like, oh shit, you know, and like we're reaching out, talking to people like, okay, what are they doing? Like seeing patterns, seeing like new trends. And it's like, man, I haven't worked like that in a decade. You know, so it's like, oh, this is fun, you know?
Yeah. There's a lot of cool shit here. I mean, like the team dynamic, like just speaking with this individual and this individual just within our own unit. And it's like, you're going to do this? That sounds fucking cool. You're going to do this? Wow, I'd like to do that. I'm going there. I'm going to the schoolhouse. You know, sounds kind of lame, but it's also kind of cool.
It's super cool because you're going to get to interact with like the people.
Oh, fucking hundreds of them.
Yeah.
You know, so we're going to have translators. We're going to have students. We're going to have, you know, all kinds of individuals passing through that school. There's going to be, like, there's a dude coming in from the Foreign Legion. You know what I mean? Like, he was Foreign Legion, then he was a Royal Marine. So it's like, dude, you know, like, wow. Yeah. You know, like, don't kill me.
Please.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm probably going to hit you with a
snowball.
snowball.
Did you hear what Jim said about you? Just kidding.
Jim said Foreign Legionnaires are pussies. He said second pair all the way.
These guys are really good
second pair
at nothing.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're already working with dudes who are fucking locked in. You know what I mean? Who have been there, just like we've been there. I think we're a bit more light and jovial in some ways. You know?
So much so.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, like I think I was asked, like, were you even in the military? That's not the first time. Like,
and that's not an insult.
No, it's funny because I feel like they mean it in an insulting way. I had a Croat say the same thing when I was training the Croats last year. Like, were you even in the military? And I was like, yeah. But I've worked so hard to extract all of that militariness out of my body. And maybe through this conversation, some of it comes out because I, like you said, turn it on, turn it off. Right? But I've worked so hard that I feel like I just walk around and I don't carry that persona. I don't carry that edge because I wanted to get it all out. Yeah. Because I hated it. It's like, oh, but I also love it. I'm appreciative of those experiences now. I'm appreciative of the fact that I did go into the military and kind of hardened me because I probably would be so fucking soft because I'm such a sensitive woo-woo. You know, it's like, well, and I don't know this. It's just kind of like maybe basic, just kind of like, well, maybe if I hadn't gone in, I'd just be a cupcake. And now I'm a cupcake who's gone through some pretty fucking cool shit that's helped kind of given me this perspective and this experience that's unique to me, you know, or whatever. And it's like, it's hardened me to some degree. But I'm not hard. I'm still a cupcake.
Oh yeah.
You know what
still
I mean?
super soft.
Yeah, still. Like you can touch me.
Yeah. No, don't touch those hands. It's so weird.
Right.
But you saying that, I don't feel like I was always soft and sensitive. Like when I first came back from Iraq, I wasn't. I was numb. I didn't feel
prior to
anything.
the military.
Yes. And do you feel like you're back to that? Back to being but vulnerable, sensitive to the point where like you're connected to your emotions?
Yeah, but the only thing that's different now is I'm old. Like I've aged so much. I've gone through like now I'm 50.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I'm reconnecting like with that person who I was prior to the military. Like, because Steve Harley used to say this all the time to me. He's like, why do you listen to so much 80s music? Well, number one,
it reminds you. Yeah.
But it reminds me of it. It used to remind me of a time of innocence prior to learning how to kill. And again, I'm not like a Green Beret type killer ranger. I was just a regular soldier, but we go through the process of learning how to kill, and it's programmed into our autonomic nervous system. And so learning how to kill for me was so impactful. And of course, wasn't aware of it until I became consciously awake. So how it affected my nervous system and my psyche. And I lost my innocence in that process, and then going to Somalia, and then of course squeezing the trigger to try to kill someone. I lost everything. So at the age of, let's say 19 to 20, I lost my innocence. And then from then on, I have just been this
mess.
I was a mess, right? But then I realized too, through childhood abuse, I really lost my innocence there.
Yeah, younger.
Right, but I just wasn't aware of it. But then the 80s music just takes me back to a time where I felt innocent prior to learning how to take life.
Yeah.
And now, I no longer... When I listen to 80s music now, it doesn't have that same feeling because I no longer feel like I lost my innocence. But now I'm just old, and it just sucks. I was like, oh, fuck, I lost so many good years, man. Like, now I'm just 50, and it's like...
You're waking up, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Like, if I could have been like this younger...
Yes.
Man, I would have crushed, I feel like, you know.
Crushed your mom.
Oh, yes. But the reason I brought that up is because when I was in... Like after that, I didn't feel I wasn't sensitive at all. I was hardened. And then it wasn't until I started working on the PTSD stuff that I guess I started to feel those feels again.
Yeah.
And then the more I work, the better it feels. And the more like I do connect with that older version of me, which I love in the sense of being sensitive like that.
Yeah.
I'd rather have all those feels with the pain. Because I still have some of the pain that still lingers around when I think about some of the traumatic things. But it's like, I'd rather have both than neither.
Well, but at the end of this, overall, I'm tired.
Oh, yeah.
I'm tired because of the life that I've lived. And I'm tired of the exhaustive process of healing that I've gone through.
Centering, healing.
And the exhaustive process of living as many lives as I've had and having to heal all of those lives in this lifetime.
I did say something similar like that to someone I'm close to, and it was just like, you know, worst case I die.
Yeah.
In Ukraine. I was like, but if I do, I'm doing something that I want to do that's going to challenge me, that I feel like I need to be.
Right.
Like I'm drawn to be here. I was like, but worst case that happens. And I was like, worst case, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I was like, I've been tired for years.
Yeah.
I was like, this whole like existence and just like, I was like, it's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
I was like, but what's not and what makes it more purposeful and enjoyable is doing what you want to do to the fullest, you know? And I was like, and if that leads me that way, I was like, then it leads me that way.
Yeah.
It's like, it is what it is.
Right.
I don't think that, I'm not afraid of death. And I think by not being afraid of that aspect means that you're really living because you don't care anymore. You're not trying to avoid shit.
Right.
You're just like, I'm going.
Now that's similar to what I said earlier when I said I could die tomorrow and I'm okay with that. And you're like, well, fill in the gap between the...
Well, you said you would kill yourself tomorrow.
Well, I could. I could die in a minefield. In a missile attack, or I could end my life.
Yeah. Well, the disconnect for me was like taking your life opposed to losing your life.
Right.
Yeah, if that's in the framework of what you're suggesting, it makes complete sense.
Yeah, because I mean, well, it's like I still consider myself bipolar, right? Bipolar is a nightmare. It truly is a nightmare. It's a nightmare to deal with. It's exhausting, and I have gone through it mostly naturally. I've been medication free for 12 years now. You know, off of everything and anything, sleep issues, not just
almost 13.
Right. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. That's like a teenager.
Right. Like PTSD, there's sleep discomfort, sleep issues, whatever. Like let's say sleeping through the air alarm the other night. Like even if from the air raid, you know what I mean? Like even if there was an air raid and the alarm went off, like, and I heard it, I would be like, fuck that.
Yeah.
My sleep is more important than going to a fucking bunker.
It wasn't for me because
at
of
1 a.m.
this show.
Because it's going to disrupt my sleep. And I was like, I can't afford that. So I'm glad. When he texted me and I woke up in the morning and I saw that text, are you coming to the bunker? And I was like, I slept through an air raid? I was so proud of myself. I was so proud of myself because of the effort that I have put forth to learn how to sleep, to relearn how to sleep. And I was like, my sleep's inconsistent. The patterns are, I have such disciplined sleep behaviors, and what have you, sleep maintenance. And I was like, wow, I slept through that. Okay, cool. Fuck that. I'm not coming down. Like, good for you. I was like patting myself on the back. You slept through an air alarm. Fuck yeah, air raid. So, I mean, but people can't understand that.
I have done that, but not here.
But people wouldn't be able to understand that.
Yeah.
Like, hey guys, look, I'm happy for myself because I slept.
I slept through an air raid.
Right. But,
which, for those who don't understand, we have these apps on our phone that scream. And if that wasn't enough, the entire city screams.
And I have 2 phones next to my bed with both apps.
So it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm impressed.
Right. So am I. Right? Can you high five me?
High five. Your soft, weird hands. That didn't even hurt. It was like a pillow.
I know, it didn't hurt me. Yeah. Well, it actually hurt me. But it's things like that. The efforts that I've put forth to heal, and I'm not going to allow this war to take that from me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. As well as, like, I feel like now, if things do get uncomfortable, because that's something, I guess, that could be real.
Yeah.
If this does get too stressful, too uncomfortable, if I start seeing re-trauma, things that I can't decompress, things that I can't process, like, quickly, then it's like, yeah, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's not worth my mental health. Because I even had people like, are you going over there, to hurt, like, to beat yourself up? And I'm like, no, what?
Right.
What are you talking about? And they're like, oh, well, like, this is like some, like, death sentence, you know? It's like, no, I'm going over here because it's going to be really cool. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a hell of an experience,
I have 2 subjects I want to bring up.
Go, shoot.
So one is my daughter. My daughter said, why are you going over there? Because you need the chaos. So that was a very sharp observation from my daughter.
Yeah.
30 years old, whatever. And, I was like, well, has she had conversations about me with her mother or with whomever, and I was like, oh, look at you, smarty pants, or is she aware enough of my own family environment and my own dynamics that she, said that? Either way, I just was like, oh, I was impressed. And I thought about it and I was like, no, I'm not that person anymore. I don't need that chaos. I don't want that chaos in my life.
Yeah.
I said, I'm just,
Or I would have taken one of the other jobs.
Yeah.
Disarming shit, and like really like being involved. Like, that's not anything I want to do anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was impressed by that, but actually it made me look inside again. I was like, no, it has nothing to do with that. I'm not that person. I'm not looking for a thrill. I'm not looking to die. I'm not looking for the same things that I was looking for. And I don't want or need that same chaos in my life because I grew up with chaos. And war was just a reflection of the same environment that I grew up in because I grew up in a warlike environment.
But in the same sense, I didn't see this opportunity and be like, ooh, I don't want to go do that. I don't want to die. It was like those weren't even on the table. It was like, is this something you want to do? It's like, I wasn't trying to avoid anything. I wasn't looking for anything. We
have to be cognizant of death all the time though, right? Initial success or total failure. Like, that's real.
Yeah.
So, like, the fact of the matter is, one, we're going to Ukraine. It's a war. Whether it's being fought here in Kiev or not, is not up for debate. It's being fought in different parts of the country. It's been here. It's moved back, etc.
It's very real.
We did not know where we were going. We did not know what we were doing. So you had to be prepared. At least I did. I had to be prepared. Okay, like, I could end up in the East.
You had to process the whole...
Exactly. The possibility.
Yeah.
I had to process the worst case scenario. What's the worst case scenario? This is the worst case scenario. I had to process that. I'm prepared for that.
I don't know about you. I have boundaries. What am I comfortable with? Does this exceed my threshold?
Right.
And I was like, no. And it's like, okay, off the table. Next thing.
And the other night, you're like, well, I don't know if you're up there Lieutenant Danning it or whatever on the balcony.
Yeah, I just imagine like the airstrikes coming in. You're sitting there with a bathrobe, just like, take me.
Right. You know, and there, I do have that aspect of my personality. I do. It's like, fuck, you know, like, let it rain, you know? And because that is kind of like that thrill-seeking, dysfunctional, broken, like, whatever. However, it's not that. Like, the other day when I said, let it rain, I'm eating my chicken wings or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm joking, but at the same time, it's like, well, it's okay. I've already accepted that. No, I'm not going to go out and seek it.
Yeah.
Like, in the past, I would seek it. I would seek to put myself in a situation that could potentially kill me.
Yeah.
And it almost did multiple times.
Yeah.
You know, and whether it was in war or outside of war, you know, and I ended up with serious fucking brain injury. I ended up with serious issues through the years that I have had to work hard to heal. You know, so I'm like, I really did fuck myself up, you know, and it's like, God damn, like, you're stupid. You know, you did these things stupidly. You did these things carelessly. But the other thing I wanted to bring up, and it kind of plays into something we've talked about off and on throughout this conversation, the spirituality and the listening and understanding and feeling good about where we're going and not trying to force things. Like, you know, you're going to end up here in Kiev. And like, here, I've been telling you, like, well, I want to go to the East. I want to be involved in A, B, C, and D. I want to kind of be mentoring. I want to get hands-on experience, et cetera, et cetera. But then the opposite happens. They're sending me to probably the most safe location in this country to be part of the training school, to be part of that training effort. And I'm like, oh, that's a cool assignment. That's a cool task. It's going to be like, that's probably one of the best long-term assignments here.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's going to establish, you know, wherever, it's going to establish something for me. I'm going to learn a lot, you know, but it's like, okay, I'm not going to fight that right now. You know, like, even though I may want to get my hands dirty, that's not what the universe has in store for me. The universe has this other thing in store for me, and it's pushing me to the West where there isn't. You know, there's been a few strikes out there, but like, if the Russians roll into Ukraine,
You'll be there in a week or two.
It's going to be days, weeks, months, you know, based on the resistance, if they ever get that far.
By then, you're going to walk 12 minutes
to the border, right? I'll be fucking eating candy bars, and you'll be like, John, my little buddy, my little furry buddy. And I'll be like, fuck you, Joe. I'll take care of Jess. But you know what I mean? It's like, here I am, and it's like, okay, life is moving me in that direction. I'm just accepting it. It's like, there's been a little bit of resistance. Well, I'd like to do this. I wouldn't mind doing this. And maybe I'll go there. Maybe they'll bounce us around and move us around. We don't know yet. But it's like, all right, I'm going out there. And where am I ending up? I'm ending up in a forest that is my environment. You know what I mean? I'm surrounded by hundreds, if not, I don't know how big it is. Let's just say hundreds of acres of nature preserve in a fucking forest tucked away. I'm not going to give the grid coordinates or anything like that, but if you want to text me, I'll send them to you, you know, but,
come visit,
you know what I mean? Like,
a Russian silo.
Right. Like, I'm going to end up in probably one of the most pristine premier locations in this country, which is like, that's pretty cool. You know,
yeah, with chickens
and
a fire pit,
catering and
maybe
a fire
goats.
pit and goats and a fitness center and all these things. And it's like, what a cush thing, you know, and it's like, and I need to listen to that because maybe my body doesn't need to be challenged anymore. I'm older. You know, I've put myself through enough. I've proved a lot of things to myself.
Take you out to pasture.
Right. Now it's time for me to go die in a forest, churning butter.
Goat butter.
Goat butter. Like, come here, goat. I'm going to milk your butter, you know, or butter your milk or whatever it is, you know. So, and in a way, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, So it's like, okay, maybe I don't need to be out there. Maybe that's where I need to be, and maybe that's where my body needs to be. So I have to listen to that. And if things shift, because we have ways to work around that. It's like, hey, bring me in as an additional assistant or to do different things. And I think there's going to be flexibility here, but the point is listening to the body, following the process, trusting the process, being the process, and just going with the flow. I'm in Kiev. It's awesome. I don't really want to leave here right now because I haven't seen enough of it. I do want to probe into the East and see some more, but life has taken me in another direction, and I just have to follow that. It's kind of like with Cambodia. I wish I could have stayed there. It was fantastic. But at the same time, Cambodia was a lot of my nervous system. I was processing a lot there. It was ultimately healing. It was a beautiful experience. But then again, the other side of the house of like seeing the corruption, seeing how long they've been clearing that country, and the fact that it's such a revenue generator, blah, 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 blah. So at this point, we're probably just repeating ourselves. I'm repeating myself, and you're yawning.
I feel like, it's getting late.
Yeah.
But I have no intentions of this being a short trip yet.
Yeah.
Things can change for sure. But I would like to follow up.
Yep.
And we'll chat again next time we cross paths.
Totes.
Because you're bouncing off soon. I'll be stuck here solo.
Yep.
But I really appreciate it. And get the hell out of my room.
Yep.
Play, buddy.